Looks like we're live. What's going on, everybody? Hope everybody's having a good weekend. Happy Saturday to everybody. I guess tonight we're going to kind of dive a little bit deeper into some of the science. I know we went over fermentation and how enzymes basically break down starches and all that good jazz. So what we're going to do tonight maybe is break down exactly how that happens. So fasten your seatbelts. That get a little crazy. We'll learn a little science tonight. And I've got this other PC shining in my face here. I'm going to use this to watch the chat while I'm going to try to do a full screen so you can see some stuff I've got on my main screen here. So I guess before we do all that, I guess we better give everybody a chance to get in here, and I'll explain everything what's going on. But we're going to delve a little bit into how do enzymes break down the starches and what that means, and how the old school method of step mashing is being replaced with a lot of the exogenous enzymes that we use today because of the ease and use and process of it. So we're going to go over a little bit of that, but first, as always, gotta share those links. So give me a chance to pull this up. You know what? I feel so stupid, but up until today, I'm usually have my headsets on so I can hear everything, right? What's there to hear? I don't have a guest on here. I mean, it's live, but I don't have a guest. I can't hear chat, so I don't know why I've been wearing my headset all this time. There's really not much to listen to. I don't know. Maybe it makes me feel a little better or something like that. But all this time, man, I've been having my headset on and hearing absolutely nothing. So now I'm like, why exactly am I putting that on? So if I have somebody on here, I'll have to wear them so I can hear them talk. But I can't hear chats. I don't know why in the hell I've been listening. I don't know. What am I listening for? To. But so I guess, people leave messages or doesn't leave a sound either. So I'm at a loss. It's one of those things you get used to doing. I guess I'm used to doing, the shit show and podcasts with, guests and other things on there where I do need to have them on. But I guess if it's just me on stage here, I don't rightly have a need for them now, do I? So now I don't have to get my head indented. You seen all these gamers how they wear their headsets all day gaming and streaming and stuff, and they take them off and they've got pictures of their head. I've got an indentation. They say it goes away after time, but I've got a little bit of an indentation in my head as well from the damn headset, wearing the headsets all the time. If I'm not doing this, I'm gaming or doing something on the PC, and I always wear those. I may go to a lighter weight set, but these HyperXs, man, they in game. I think they're made by what's that? It's a memory company, Kingston. Makes these. They make good RAM too, but it gives me a real good dimensional sound in game. Like if a noise is coming from my front right, I can hear it in the headset from my front right. Whereas if I'm wearing buds, it's just right side, left side. So there's a little more stereo and you can kind of get a sense of direction with them on too. So it helps a lot for gaming and all that good stuff. But not much for wearing if you don't need them on. So I also noticed today, it's like 2 days after I post all my links to some of these groups, like 3 or 4 days later, they approve it. So a lot of those people don't get to see it live, but they still get the benefit of watching it and can learn. And if you are watching it and it's not live, you can still ask me questions. Just jump in the group, DIY shining stuff, or on the militia page, and jump in there and ask questions. And if you want to, link my name in the question, if you want me to answer it specifically, do that, and we'll get you taken care of. So, but going for the statistics, we probably have about maybe 8 to 10% around that, maybe less than that watch it live, and probably 90% plus watch it later. So, those people that are watching it on the way to work or at their leisure, thank you for watching it. And if you have questions, as I said, jump in there and ask them, because that's what we're here for. So hopefully you can join us live and ask your questions, at some point in time. But if not, we hope that you can. And I'm sorry that I can't see chat while I'm sharing these links. It's really hard. So I'm going to try to set this other one up so when I can always see the StreamYard, and then I can on the other, the screen, be pulling up links and things like that to show pictures and things of that nature. So what's going on, Mark? What's up, Chicken Slapper? Hey, Nikki B. No, Erecto double, whatever. I stream to whoever wants to watch, but I ain't gonna pay to have people come watch me. I don't even make money at this, so I'm damn sure not gonna pay people to come watch it. Everybody wants to can. What's up, Curtis? Hey, Juanita. Radcliffe, Kentucky. Woo! Another Kentuckian in his. Welcome to the stream. You had an issue last week. Oh, what happened, brother? Oh, on your StreamYard or what? What happened, brother? Last week. I wasn't even streaming. I don't think Roger streamed either. I think Frade might have been the only person streaming last Saturday. I was up in Dayton at the Phil Billy Full Moon Festival. So what happened, Mark? Let me share these links, and Mark can tell me what happened. Inquiring minds need to know. And that's why sometimes I'll post links later in the podcast. About halfway through, I'll go through and post some links to the groups that it doesn't let me post to initially, because I know that, like I said, the majority of the people don't watch it live. So love to have you in your live, but I know it's Saturday night, and people have a lot better things to do than watching my old ugly self. So they can listen to it on their way to work or something like that. That's cool. I dig it. I understand. Got to be out partying and having a good time and raving and whatever you do on Saturdays these days. Got any ravers out there? I don't think so. Probably got a few though. All right, let's see. So we're going to talk about a little bit more in depth about how enzymes work. So we're going to get a little bit sciencey at times, but I'm going to try to explain it. And that's why I got all kinds of pictures, so I'm just going to basically leave my desktop. So I'm not going to be able to see a lot of questions and stuff. That's why I was trying to set this other one up, but I've got an alt that I use for my gaming, and I was trying to set it up on this other PC, but I don't have it set up. So I'm not going to be able to see questions, but I will bounce back and forth between being able to see the StreamYard and the comments versus just showing the pictures. But a lot of it is going to be just showing my screen, and because pictures worth 1,000 words. I can sit here and try to explain something, I'm blue in the face, and people like it's hard to understand. But once you see it in a picture, a lot of times it makes more sense, So I got a bunch of pictures and charts and stuff. I love my charts, so got a bunch of those to share as well. So Should be, oh, I should sort these. I've got some larger groups here at the end that I'd like to get more exposure to, so more people get to see than the beginning, but we'll get to them. Most of them probably don't watch it live anyway. A lot of these big groups don't have a lot of users watching constantly like a lot of the smaller, more personal groups do, but we'll get it out there one way or the other. I'm getting it out to most of them today, so that's pretty good. Some of these groups may not. Well, some of it's just posting a video, but they can click it and watch it. I guess I didn't wait long enough, maybe. I'm afraid if I delete it and then repost it, it's going to count as 2. So I'll go back to that one in a minute. But I think Facebook is finally lightening up on me a little bit because it's letting me post to more places than usual, I guess. I think the more people you reach out to, the more people you have watching. And as soon as I say that, it won't work anymore. So we'll see if this one... okay, so not to there. Let's see. Yeah, let me delete this one. Or maybe I'll just post it in the comments, see how that works. No, that's not working. Well, it's not a big group anyway. We'll just try to repost it. And yeah, it's going to do that. Okay. All right, so we're back. Well, scrolling back, well, had a lot of comments already. Had an issue. Dirty socks. What's going on, Morgan? With the run you did. What's going on, Wayne? What's up, brother? Come on, Jeff. That's a good question. Maybe notifications might be turned off for Facebook, or a lot of times it'll send notifications to an email that you have set up for your Facebook and not directly to you. So it may be sending them to your email and you just don't get a pop-up. But I know sometimes, me included, a lot of times, Facebook, every time somebody posts something in one of your groups or something like that, ding, ding, it's just constant. So I'm guilty of turning off the notifications and the emails. I don't want to hear that ding all day because it's just constant on the phone. So that may be the case as well, Dustin. But you found it. Just remember Wednesdays and Saturdays, hump days and fun days, right? So, all right. So you did a mash and finished and seemed okay until you ran it. During a run, you kept getting this off odor, smelled like dirty socks. Sounds like tails, kind of. What's going on, Shadow? Yes, sir. Yeah, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to go over that and how that's changed a lot, and how even in beer making, it's helping a lot with modified and unmodified and partly modified grains, malts, and how the enzymes and the all the new enzymes and the advancements in enzymes have made things a lot easier. So the deeper you got in the run, the odor got stronger and stronger. Oh no, brother, we're going to try to take some questions first. So no, this is perfectly fine, brother. Yeah, what happens a lot of times is we'll get some questions off the bat that everybody has, like you, pertinent to something that's happened during the week, and we're going to take care of all that first. But just kind of preparing people for when the questions start slowing down a little bit. That's when I'm going to start getting into more of this. So I do want to go through and ask these questions, because once I start the other, I'm not going to see comments as much, because I'm going to be doing full screen and showing my actual screen, which is full of pictures right now to help explain everything. So, no, right now actually is the best time to ask your questions. Let's get them in and get them taken care of. Probably oils and things of that nature. You probably what exactly were you running? And I hope you didn't leave. I hope you're still with me, brother. But yeah, we're going to take questions now. I'm just kind of preparing people for what we got coming later, so they can be thinking about what we're going to talk about and go of that. It does sound like you got quite a bit of oils in there. That's why I'm asking. Maybe what you're running might be, like a Bloody Butcher. That kind of starts out not smelling the best either. From a lot of the oils in it. But gotta know what she's running, and I hope you're still with us. Let me message to. You still with me, brother? I guess he logged off. Thank God. Let me send him a message. Wayne, I tell you what, brother, I'll send you a link when I go when I start doing the talking about the enzymes and stuff. I'll send a link, and maybe if you can, you can kind of watch the chat and kind of help me with that as I try to explain some things, because I know a lot of this very well from step mashing. A lot of this will be a lot to do with step mashing, so that would definitely help me out a lot. But let me send Mark a message to get his butt back in here. All right, so let me send him that message. Now I can go back to chat as I see. Is it still blocked? Damn, Steve, I'm sorry, brother. We'll get on Damon. Stay on to him. Make him fix it. I can't believe he blocked you. Should be just for 24 hours. So what time was it? Well, it may not be 24 hours yet. Maybe why? Because I've heard 24 hours, and it was probably 9 o'clock when he did that. So we may be on the 23rd hour or something like that. So that might be why. All right, we got a question here while we're waiting for Mark to get back. Could using freeze dried or dehydrated fruit decrease the temp needed for good liquor? No, it won't decrease the temp, and I'm trying to follow you. Dehydrated fruit is excellent for infusions, because you're not adding all that water, to your infusion flavors, to your infuser. Because a lot of the problems with infusion is the buildup of water, right? So while you're fermenting, you got your infuser filled with fruit, with a lot of times fresh fruit, pureed with a lot of water in it, a heavy amount of water. And as that goes through, it's watered down. So basically, it's not a concentrated flavor to begin with. Why You know, a lot of people will reduce their, you know, if they do like a, you know, blend up some peaches or something like that, puree some peaches and put them in there. They'll try to reduce it a little bit. So cooking it and trying to cook a little bit of the fluids off, you know, kind of concentrating it. Same thing with a lot of the liquids, you know, they'll try to, you know, like your watermelons, you know, you'll try to cook off some of your watermelons and cook off some of that water because there's so much water in a watermelon. And once you cook off a lot of that water, you'll increase a lot of that flavor, you know, and hopefully you don't make the sugars a little more complex. Don't let it caramelize. You don't want it to get, you know, brown or anything on you, but, um, you know, help reducing it, kind of like a maple syrup, you know, kind of definitely helps. But as far as temperature wise, um, I'm not following you. I generally, you know, like if I'm doing a brandy when I'm starting my mash, if that's what you're talking about, you still want to hit that good high strike temperature of 160 plus to kill bacteria off. You know, you hear people come in with issues if they've got um, puke. It smells like vomit, and we talked about that the last time as butyric acid caused by Clostridium, right? The bacteria. Um, so I thought it was something started with that. Like getting so forgetful these days, but there's lots of bacteria and stuff. You know, even though a lot of these things are naturally occurring and will be part of the fermentation process, you can minimize them with sanitation and by, you know, boiling things off, killing wild yeast, things of that nature. So you can help control your flavor that way as well. So if that's what you're talking about, if it's dehydrated, will it still have those bacteria on there? And I'm not sure what temperature the dehydrator would get up to. Um, but if it's getting above around 160 plus, it probably would kill off the bacteria. So a lot of times you won't need that high, you know, temperature to kill off wild yeast and things like that. It'd probably get killed off in the process. Now, as far as doing that to like a grain or something like that, I probably wouldn't, because if you're going to use it for its uh, natural amylase, you would probably don't want to denature it. We'll talk about that a little bit later as well. Yeah, I don't think the timing was coincidental with that at all. I think it was an accident. I really do. Yeah, I don't think he did that. What's going on, Kimbo? What's up, Mikey? Okay, thought process. We have that farm in the Philippines for mangoes, and they have a short shelf life. Okay, if I get a way to remove the water, I can keep it longer. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. You can dehydrate it. Yeah, and rehydrate it. You know, you can make a powder of it. You know, you can dehydrate it, grind it up into a powder, pack it, and get the, you know, lowest, you know, cheapest shipping, you know, as possible. Um, Still going to be expensive, you know, to ship mangoes, you know, but absolutely, you can definitely do that and then just reconstitute it and then make a brandy from it. Absolutely. What's going on, Middle Tennessee? Welcome to the show, brother. We get a lot of people from the southeast. I'd say probably the majority of the people probably from Pennsylvania, Ohio, on down to Florida, west of Mississippi. But we got people from all over the world too. We get people from Australia, England. We got a lot of people from England watch us. Boom, that's a beautiful place. Had somebody on here last week from North Florida that had some Indian grains. I'm trying to think of the guy's name, but he's got some nice heirloom grains that he was willing to share some seeds with people if they want to pick them up. I hope he's on here. I hope Idaho. Hell yeah. So hopefully he'll get in the militia as I asked him to, and share some of those seeds with their brothers, so everybody can use some of those and make some liquor with them. All right, what other questions got, Mark? Let me see if he replied. Well, I think he might be doing a podcast right now too. I think sometimes he does one on Wednesdays as well. See, he's probably busy. I'd say, I don't know, early tells like that, all I can think of is excess amount of oils that might be causing it. Clint? Hey, Jonathan. Maybe Wayne or Clint can help answer that too. Have you ever had any runs like that? You all smell oily, dirty sock from the very get-go and smell that way? I just wonder if it didn't really start out smelling like that, because I know that anytime you get like a butyric acid or some of these organic acids, in there, and they're not able to run their course, they'll kind of stink throughout. I know butyric acid does for sure. You definitely gotta let it run its course. We're gonna sell those on t-shirts and shirts. So, if you want the patches, I'm gonna put it on a cheap t-shirt, and what you do with the patch is your business. I just want to make sure people realize that if you put it on the vest, that you do run the risk of somebody, having an issue with it. So I hate telling grown men what they can do and what they can't do, but we don't want anybody to get hurt. But at the same time, if you want to buy a shirt with it on there and take it off and put it on whatever you want to, not much we can say about that. So, so I'm going to be putting them on t-shirts and nice shirts. They're really nice collared shirts. Few Billy wears all the time, and a few other people. That looks like the Steven Seagal shirts. They're pretty cool, nice and something to wear over anything, loose fitting, and we're going to put them on those as well. But they're a little bit more expensive, so it's going to be a little more costly. I think on the t-shirts is probably going to be like, pretty much the cost of the patch set and the shirt, plus a little bit of markup, not much. Probably like $75. But for like the other shirts, those shirts actually cost as much or more than the vest I was buying. So, it's going to be 125 or so dollars, whatever, 75 plus the cost of the shirt and maybe a $5 markup. Hopefully the iron-on works. If it has to be sewn on it, if there's more labor involved, and I'm going to have to pay somebody to do that. So it might cost a little bit more. We'll just have to see what they charge us to sew them on. But we don't want anybody getting hurt. That's the big issue with that. There's a lot of people that would buy it not knowing, the risk that might be involved, and it's not just biker friends around where you live. Right, it doesn't have the MC patches and all that. It doesn't have all that. But at the same time, Steve, there's always that one out there, and if we can prevent that, we got a lot of members that are fairly naive when it comes to MCs and wearing, patches and stuff like that. And we got a bunch of grumpy old farts as well. And, you know, I'd hate for, you know, an MC or somebody come up, hey, what's up with the 3-piece? And, you know, the grumpy old fart says, what the fuck's it to you? Or something like that. We don't want people getting hurt. You know, we want everybody to have something like that because it is cool as shit. You know, it is cool as fuck. But we don't want people getting hurt, you know. So if you want to buy the t-shirt and take it off that and put it on anything you want to, you know, we can't control that. You know, we can't say what you can and can't do, and you know, but we will be making sure that everybody knows that there are risks involved, because there's always, you know, always going to be that one asshole out there that that wants to make a name, or some prospect, you know, and he's going to want to take a vest into his clubhouse and show all his buddies how badass he was because he took that off some old man or something like that, you know. So there's always going to be that dickhead, you know, and you know, most won't have a problem with it, but there's always that one. If we can prevent it, you know, I think we should try to. But at the same time, you know, we can't tell people what they can do, you know, once they get it. So if they want to buy it and cut it off and resew it any way they want to, then that's going to be totally on them. You know, it's you know, we're going to try our best to keep it safe and put it on shirts. You know, I'm not sure how denim, you know, how that would work if you know, like a full sleeve jacket or, you know, coats or thing. I'd like to be able to sell just the patch kits so people can put it on their coats, you know, and winter coats and their own shirts, you know. Um, so if that's the case, you know, you can buy it with the t-shirt and take it off there and you bet your own risk. You know, it's we can't really, you know, we do want to keep people safe, but at the same time, you know, we can't rule over them, lord over them. So we're going to try to put them on shirts and t-shirts and keep it safe that way. And when they buy them, you know, there's going to be maybe a little sheet of paper, you know, that we give them and that talks about, you know, the history of the 3-piece and what it means to a lot of MCs and you know, if anybody asks about it, how to be respectful and you know, answer their questions, let them know that, you know, we're a group of moonshiners and we formed a group here on Facebook, and we wanted to kind of have our own little club, you know, patch and symbol, and you know, this is what we came up with. Now we will be trying to, we'll sew them together as a one piece, so it'll be, instead of being separated like that, we're going to put them on the shirts. Well, you can't even see it. We're going to put them on the shirts where there's no gap, right? There's no gap in between there, so it looks more like a one piece. So it won't look as much like a 3-piece, and it'll look like a 1-piece. Personally, I'm gonna wear mine. I know the risks, and I'm willing to accept the risks, but I can't. I can't. You know, I don't want other people, you know, assuming that risk, not knowing the risk that they're taking. I just. Well, it's not just in chat. It's well, actually, it wasn't even in chat. It was. It was outside of chat. There's been some pictures floating around. When I went up to Phil Billy's, you know, I took the vest up there to show Phil Billy. It was the first time anybody had seen it, right? And a lot of people were taking pictures and posting it, and it got around, and some people, you know, saw it that were also in MCs, and they had an issue with it, you know, out of concern for members. You know, they didn't have a personal problem with it, but they were afraid that, you know, other members were going to get out there, you know, put it on as they ride their bikes, ride through an area. Some dickhead's going to do something or say something, you know, and that's very possible, you know. Um, there's always that one, and you know, we don't want to take that risk. We don't want to somebody, you know, getting hurt that doesn't understand the risks. You know, it's hard for me to tell a grown ass man that's in an MC that understands the risks that he can't have it. You know, that's kind of hard, but we're just going to put them on t-shirts, and if somebody wants to cut it off the t-shirt and sew it on something else, that's on them. You know, I can't rule over people like that. So, but you know, as far as just selling the patch kit alone so they can put it on the vest, I'm not going to do that. But it is going to be on a cheap ass t-shirt, and it's not going to be marked up much, so not going to be much different, to be honest with you. So 75, $80, something like that for the patch kit. And I think for the shirt, it's going to depend on what they cost. But if they're just a little bit more than the vest, I think we're going to be 120, 25 on the vest. So, and that was with the vest at 30. Those things on Amazon were like 30 bucks and change, you know, after shipping and or tax. I don't get shipping because I'm Prime, but after tax and everything, mid 30, you know, 33, 34 bucks. So we were just going to basically add that to the 80 and 30, 110, add, you know, a little bit for markup, and, you know, that'd be that. But I'm not sure how much the shirts are cost. I think they might be a little more expensive than the vest. So if they are, it's not going to be much. It's going to be $5 or $10. So it's probably going to be like 75, 80 for the t-shirt, and 125, 35 for the nice shirt. If that's $30 to $40 range, you know, it's going to be 125. If it's 40, 45, it's going to be a little bit more. So I'm not marking up stuff a lot. You know, I do have to, you know, I've got a heat press that I'm going to be using to iron a lot of it on. If you want to sew it on, you know, that's on you. I might, if it's easy to tack, you know, I might, like, you know, tack different spots all the way around it just to help reinforce, especially on the corners, the tops, you know, to help reinforce it so it doesn't peel off so easily. But as far as taking it to a seamstress and having them each sewn on, that's probably going to add a lot of expense, you know, for their labor and stuff, because I'm sure they'll charge quite a bit for that. I do have my grandmother's old sewing machine. I'm going to try to figure out a way to do it if I can. It won't be a whole lot more, um, but that'll be that. But yeah, we're going to try to sew the patches together, or, you know, iron them on as a one piece. So it, you know, it won't maybe tick as many people off as a three-piece might. So if it looks like a one piece, maybe, you know, maybe people won't be offended. And basically just go from there. You know, we'll have to, you know, let everybody know that there are risks involved, and if you're willing to assume there is, and it's, you know, up to you. But I don't think anybody's going to say anything if it's on a t-shirt or on a collared shirt. If they do, they're just looking for something to bitch about, and we really can't do much about that. You know, there's always going to be an asshole to do that too. So, but you know, if it's just a, you know, a shirt with sleeves or a t-shirt, how, you know, how the hell how are they going to complain about that? Um, yeah, yes, it's grand. Everybody, lots of, you know, I just don't see Karens on bikes like that though. You know, I know there's a lot of people out there. What are they called, dudes that are Karens? We need to come up with. They probably have a name for male Karens. What do they call them? Darren. Darrens and Karens. Here we go. Sorry if there's some Darrens out there. I didn't mean to offend you, but it rhymes with Karen and it's Darren. So yeah, there might be some Darrens out there and some Karens, but I don't want anybody getting hurt. Definitely don't want anybody getting hurt. Kevin's okay. Should be Darren, don't you think? Darren and Karen. No, all the Darrens are saying no. Kevin. But yeah, we don't want people getting hurt, you know. But it is cool as hell, and I want everybody to have one if they want one. And I just don't want anybody getting hurt at the same time, you know. So we're just gonna put them on shirts, and they'll look good. You know, they'll be cool on shirts. They look the same. But I have had a lot of MCers inquire as well. They want one, and they damn sure know the risks involved. So, you know, it's hard for me to tell a patched motorcycle person that's a one percenter no, you can't have this. It's dangerous. You know, it's kind of fucking hard. It's hard. I'm sorry, but it's tough. You know, we got some out there, you know. Definitely some that watch. You know, I've talked to them, but they understand. They understand, you know, that there are people out there. They don't care. You know, they're 1%ers, so they really don't give a fuck about the Darrens or Kevins out there that might say something, and they'd probably say, you know. But at the same time, I doubt that they could. They probably couldn't wear it because they're patched with somebody else, or maybe they used to be patched, but might be just something they'd like to hang in their room. You know, I've talked to a lot of people. Just, you know, I just like to hang that on the wall. You know, some people are like, man, I'm gonna put that in the glass enclosure. Man, it's awesome. I love it. You know, so kind of use it as just a banner. You know, on the wall. You know, it's so. Um, we'll get it all figured out. You know, I just our main concern is we don't want somebody getting hurt over it. You know, it's just not that important in the whole scheme of things. It is cool as fuck and it does look good, but at the same time, you know, I don't want to get that call that so and so, you know, got killed last night because some group beat the shit out of him because he had that vest on. You know, I definitely don't want to handle that call. So, yeah, if we can avoid that, we're going to try to. But in the whole scheme of things, you know, if we say your shirt and you just unsew it or pull it off and put it on something else any way you want to, I just don't see how we can control anybody doing that, you know. But we're gonna try to do the right thing, you know. Some is a one piece, and leave it up to other people to either do it that way or, you know, take the risk. Personally, I'm just going to wear it at festivals. It's going to be hotter than fuck. So probably, I don't know how much I'll be wearing it at Maggie. You know, if I make it down there this weekend, hopefully we can make it. Ann's got to get her car worked on Wednesday, and if they hold it overnight until Thursday, hopefully we can get it early. If it's going to be late, we may not make it for the pre-party, and if I can't, I don't know. Hell, that's half the fun, really. So we'll see. But they are a little hot to wear. But wearing them at festivals and stuff like that probably be about the only time I'd ever wear it. I'd keep it on the wall, you know, hung up and on my basement wall along with other things because I like it too. But probably be something I wear at festivals, and that'll be about the only time you see me wear it. It's not gonna be something I wear every day, or when I go out riding or something like that. I'm not gonna wear it. But so anyway, let's move on from that. If anybody else got any questions? Yeah, actually, I talked to one of the two big ones. If you're talking about Outlaws and Hell's Angels, I guess those are the two big ones. Pagans and Banditos. You know, generally people say the big four. You know, that's Pagans, Banditos, and of course the Hell's Angels and Outlaws. I don't know. I think the Outlaws might be the oldest group. Not much, brother. We've been talking about distilling, and right now we got a group that Moonshine Militia that a lot of us belong to, and it's a Facebook group made up of distillers, home distillers that are into the hobby, and moonshiners. If you want to call yourself a moonshiner or home distiller, we like home distiller. It sounds a little better to the judge, maybe if you're to get caught. I'm a home distiller, not a moonshiner, but it's all the same. We just sit and talk about moonshine and how to do it, how to make it better, doing different distillates, making gins and rums and vodkas and all that good stuff. And but we were talking about a club patch and stuff that we were going to do that we're going to have to change up on so people can be safe, and how we're going to have to proceed with that so people don't, you know, end up on the wrong side of a EMC. But anyway, Wayne, you still with me, brother? I'm going to bring Wayne in here so he can. Awesome. Well, we're going to get a little bit in on the science behind it. I'm glad to have you here. Wayne, you still with me, brother? I'm going to send Wayne a link so he can kind of keep track of the questions while I try to point out some of the pictures and kind of go over what actually happens in the distillation process. That's cool. Yeah, I was watching a video the other day, a dude growing peyote. He sells seeds all over the world, but he can't sell in the U.S. because it's illegal to have the seeds, and of course grow and possess peyote. But he said he had some other kind of cacti that also had some mescaline in it that aren't illegal. So pretty interesting. But there's lots of poppies. Not all of them produce heroin, I don't think, or opium that they refine to heroin. But that's for different podcasts. maybe that's, yeah, that's for different podcasts. Let me send Wayne a link and Clint, you in here? Clint's usually in here with me too. If he's in here, I'll send him a link. We can all three get on here. Now, damn, I'm about to put my headset on. Fuck. Yeah, that's probably the legal poppy. Yeah, actually, poppies are nice flowers that are grown everywhere. Not all of them have the opium and stuff in it. But maybe I'm gonna have to put my headset on after all. Wayne wants me to get a dented head. If y'all were listening earlier, we're talking about I've been wearing my headset to do this all this time, and I really don't need it because there's no sound. I don't hear the chat, and unless there's somebody else in there with me, I don't. Yeah, the Outlaws I think started in Illinois, and they're probably the oldest group. I think they started before the Hells Angels, if I'm not mistaken. I may be mistaken. If I am, somebody correct me. I'm sure. But yeah, they started out in Illinois, and then I think one of their earliest chapters was here in Louisville, Kentucky. Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to see that, man. I'll put links working for you, Wayne. Clint, you and your brother? Usually Clint's in here helping me answer questions too. He's very knowledgeable as well. He's been distilling legally at a commercial outfit for at least 12, 15 years. But him and Wayne, for those that don't know, Wayne runs Ozark Steels. I call it Ozark Skunk Works because they come out with a lot of cool, innovative stuff. But he's very knowledgeable. Him and Alan Bishop, who I had on last week, both very knowledgeable. Him and Alan are close, and I think Alan's schooling him and teaching him quite a bit. But he hadn't gone on his own, I'll say. I was thinking Outlaw started like in the early 1900s too. I did a little research on it. We when we were up there in Ohio, when I was showing Phil Billy the vest, the Outlaw stopped by. We were having a festival and, you know, selling stills and merch and grains and other things like that, and a lot of different vendors there. But Outlaw stopped by, and their third, I guess their enforcer, Sergeant of Arms, and a bunch of his brothers stopped by, and, you know, I showed him the vest and stuff, and, you know, he thought it was cool as shit too, and didn't have a problem with it. You know, no MC patch, no, you know, no 1% triangle on it, and or diamond, 1% diamond on there, and no location, no patch, you know. So there won't be any turf, no MC, no 1%. So it should get past most all the issues, but still there's going to be, you know, that asshole out there that wants to run it for everybody. Cool. All right, so I guess Wayne's gotten busy. All right, I guess he's gotten busy. I'll now that I have the headset on, I'll hear it when he jumps in there, so I'll know. Yeah, it's funny as shit, and it probably was, you know, probably carried a little nightstick with him. There he is. What's going on, brother?
Hey, how you doing, man?
All right, brother. How's it going? Hey, that'll work a little better. All right, so we're going to go over a little bit of step mashing. Now, I know you do a step mash when you do a lot of your mashings with grains. When you step mash, do you begin at a low temperature and step mash up like the beer
Yeah,
process? Right.
yeah.
Do the protein
I always
rise?
start low and work my way up. You turn my fan
Now,
off.
oh, that
Oh,
fan's fine, brother. I couldn't hear that fan at all.
oh well, I could.
Yeah.
I can't hear you. I'm deaf as a
Oh,
post,
okay.
man.
Yeah, I'm not so good myself.
It's all right. I got a beverage to cool me off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always start on the low side, and then I work up through each rest.
Right.
And
Now,
then usually, especially if I'm using a lot of malt,
right.
once I get the mash in done, I'll take it up to 165, 170 to try kind of like pasteurize. Yeah, it kills your enzymes, but
But you've done it.
that long of a mash, you've already converted
Right.
everything.
So that's something that doesn't have the corn in it, right? Or you just do the corn separately and add it
No,
later.
I'll typically do the corn first, and I'll use the high temp enzymes to break it loose
Right.
and get those dextrins out there, and then
Lower the
I'll
temperature
bring
and
it
step it
down
up.
and come
Okay.
back up.
Because that
I
was
only use
something.
enough water for the corn. That way, I
Right.
can add
Right.
cold water back in for the rest of the grains.
Right. That was one of my questions. Is, you know, I've always done kind of a reverse step. You know, I kind of step it down as I go, which most people
Right.
do. You know, but I've never done like anything with just grains other than corn. You know, I've always had corn incorporated, so I've always tried to do corn separate, and then, you know, do the grains, you know, the other adjunct grains separately, do those step up, and then combine the two. And, you know, that works pretty well, but like you say, it can get where you get too much water, and it ruins your conversions because you
Right.
get a
And
1040 instead of 60, and it's like, okay, hello
typically,
dextrose.
I'm cooking in a 15.5 gallon keg with the top cut out. I
Right,
mean, you see the paddle and all that. So,
right.
so what I typically
So
plan
you
on is
use a hand paddle. So oh, okay, I was gonna say, man, you get like a workout
no,
then.
hell no. I
Yeah.
got a damn gear reduction motor.
Okay. Yeah, I
It is,
remember that. Yeah, I remember that now.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of all grain with a hand paddle. Don't get me
Oh
wrong.
yeah, I've done that too. It's pain. I don't anymore. I've got a drill and a little mud mixer, and there's no
Oh
way
yeah,
I'm going to put another paddle in my hands unless it's just for show.
yeah. I got a
Yeah.
buddy of mine that he took one of those mud mixers and he rigged it up where it set over his pot, and he just
hmm
put
Yeah,
it
it's for a lot
on.
of people. Just strap the drill to like a piece of wood with notches. It'll sit right on your pot. Or I've seen people, have a little, arm that, hinges back and forth to go right into their pot, just like a mixer on a mixing stand, and that works real well. And that way you can keep that water hot, stirring as you add the grains, and you can do a little
Yep,
bit of cooking before you do the steeping, and you can get it all
they're
cooked
so
in, and then
they're so handy.
yeah,
Even when I do a fruit mash, I cooking up 75 pounds of apples in that to make a brandy. I mean, if you're gonna make a real brandy, you got to use a lot of apples.
right.
And you mash it in, and I cook them all in that. I mash them up in or I use it's a apple mill or fruit mill.
Oh, did you see the
Hand crank.
video? I've got to tell you about this. There's a video on the militia page. It's getting a little bit old. Hopefully, it's in the file section. But this dude took, the ice crushers they use to make the snow cones. You throw a
Oh
bunch of
yeah,
ice in, and then it goes. And he pushes it down, and busts up the ice and chops the ice up. Real stout blades on them, right, to chop ice. This
right.
dude's using it for apples, man, and it was going through those apples like nothing, man. It was
Did,
amazing. I'm like, I've got to get one. They're like 30-40 bucks on Amazon. So hell
did you
yeah.
see Alan Bishop doing the? I hope I didn't lead you. Damn it.
No, you're
I
frozen.
just,
We can still hear you, but yeah, there you go. You're fine.
all right. Did you see Alan Bishop doing his with a freaking garbage disposal?
Oh yeah, yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, I've
Dude,
seen.
it's
Yeah,
like,
there's seen
I
a few
want
of
to go
those.
buy a garbage disposal now.
Well, the thing about that is it gets hot. It tends to get hot, so you have to give it a little bit of a rest, and wait for it to cool off, and they
Yeah,
kind of warm up because they're designed in the sink for
intermittent. Yeah,
water, to be washing over them, and that's part of the cooling process, the motor that's designed in them. Awesome, works great. Yeah, those work fantastic. I've seen videos
yeah,
of that for sure. Alan's video and a couple others, but this apple or this ice crusher that's for I guess slushies.
yeah. They're
It's
designed
got
for.
oh yeah for ice, so it's got to have a hell of a
It's got
stout
to have.
blade
It's
on
got
it.
to be healthy style. You bet.
So I think even I wouldn't would have run pitted stuff through it. So you're going to want to take your peach pits out and all that. We had a little discussion on that in the militia, and somebody was asking the militia a while back about peach pits getting ground up and apricot pits getting ground up and things of that nature, and some people seem to think that it's okay, and it's not. Some of those cherry pits can contain a pretty large amount of something called amygdalin, and it can be pretty toxic. And Alan chimed in when somebody uh, was talking about it. It has a really high boiling point of like 1,000 degrees, so you're not going to cook it off. It doesn't just cook
Right.
off and denature as most things do. Most toxins denature, in those temperatures, but this one doesn't. And um, you know, it might be okay. It's fine if you eat a whole seed because the seed's protecting it, right? And it's not going to,
Right.
it might cause some bowel obstructions or something like that, but it's not going to cause a toxin issue. But there's certain cherry pits, for example, specific types of cherries that are common that have really, really high levels of amygdalin and so definitely something that you want to watch out for, and not something that you want to run through this
Right.
grinder or cutter or something like that. But to just cut them in half, de-pit, get the pits out, run it through it, or apples. The apple seeds aren't a big issue. I doubt it's going to bust those up. And if you can strain them out, once it's all done, there's a lot of times they'll float up and get most of them,
Yeah.
uh,
Most of the time, if I'm doing apples, I always leave the skins, but I usually core them,
right.
and then I'll slice them up and throw them through the apple grinder that we got, and
Yeah, I quarter
which
them
minces
and
them up
do the
pretty
same.
good.
Yeah, I do the same. I quarter them. Do you use a lot of
But I was
pectic
wondering if
enzymes?
it's even worth it. I mean, I'm not going to break those pits.
Right. And especially, if you're just mulching it up with the mud mixer like I do, or stomping it with feet or something like that, like the old school. What's going on, Derek? Lucky dog. He won the steel this past weekend. Philbilly steel, about $2,700 outfit. It's pretty nice. Pretty nice.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's I'm gonna turn my fan on because it's hot down here as well. Can y'all hear that?
A little bit. It's not bad.
Not distracting. Yeah, it gets hot as
Sounds like
well
you're
down
on
here.
a vibrator.
I need to turn my dehumidifier on. It gets humid in this basement because it flooded, and there's still a lot of moisture down here. I know Allen's did too, and so it keeps moisture down here. And when you have a moist basement, it's a hot basement. If you run that dehumidifier, it definitely cools things off. And I can definitely tell when it's not been running because it gets a little muggy down here. But yeah,
So I'll,
go ahead.
I was going to say, I'll be seeing you next week.
This weekend.
You want another jar of that? I've got some more corn and wheat.
Yeah. Can't believe you asked me
that. Well, I'm just saying. I mean, you might not have liked it. You might not have liked the last one. I don't know.
Is this the stuff that you put on cherry wood?
No, this is no, I didn't have the only thing I did was really I've got on cherry wood is I got that Badmo barrel that's got the cherry wood stave in it.
Right.
So it's white oak and cherry wood, and I did a wheated bourbon for my brother for his birthday, and so he's got that barrel.
Awesome.
But I've got some cherry wood smoked sweet potato and agave nectar that's been set in that.
I definitely want some of that aged tequila. Jeff gave me some of his, and man, it was awesome. It was top shelf stuff, man. It's some of the best tequila I've had. So
so sweet potato, especially. I mean, I learned that you can't. I tried to do a batch without the skins on it. You're just not going to get that flavor.
Right. And that's where the amylase is.
Yeah. So anyway, this is so I smoked about a third of the sweet potatoes on cherry wood.
Right.
And the rest of them I just mashed in, regular. Then I added it all together, and then I, of course, boosted it with agave nectar and a little bit of morena sugar.
So did you depend on any of the natural enzymes in the sweet potatoes to help convert to?
Yeah, we converted the sweet potatoes, and
a lot of people don't realize that that's just like a grain. You want to use alpha and beta, and I know that there's a lot in those skins that you don't necessarily need to use as much, but yeah, you gotta break those starches down.
Just for the record, like when I first started messing with it, I've been doing sweet potatoes for about 3 years, 3 or 4 years now.
Right.
So finding out that the skins have enzymes, and I'm like, okay, I want to test this out. I want to see what my gravity is. Now I just did 2 pounds per gallon.
Right.
Because any more than that, it's a little bit of a pain in the ass to work with. I just rather I'm gonna cheat and add sugar. But
of course.
Anyway, so 2 pounds per gallon. I did the skins only, mashed them in just like I would a grain, stepped them up. I got a 1025. I took the same mash, did that, got a 1025, went ahead and added high temp amylase, went ahead and added the beta, 1025. Nothing changed. Didn't change.
Now, did you add any glucose?
Yeah, I added the Seb Amyl GL, the glucose.
Okay. Wow.
No change.
But
so that tells me the enzymes in the potatoes.
Did you check it like a day later? Because a lot of times.
Yeah, it'll bump up a couple points.
Yeah. Those glucose.
Even grain especially will do that.
And that's something we're going to go over tonight. It's amazing how.
It's crazy
how these enzymes work. It's once you see how the science works, it will amaze you and how it breaks it all down. So
I use predominantly the Seb Amyl and Sebstar HGL and Sebamyl
Right.
GL.
Right. But there's also,
and I do 0.38 milliliters per pound
right,
of grain. They recommend a lot more than that, but
you don't need that much,
you don't need it.
especially if you got malts going in there with it, and you're
Well,
just
yeah,
supplementing
that
it.
too. But
A lot
yeah,
of
you
times
really don't need
I'll
it.
even
And
use it with the malts, just to help supplement it, but I drastically reduce the amount that goes into it.
yeah, it's funny because I just had a deal. I was doing a poachine mash, and I had potatoes, and I had red wheat, and I had some barley malt and oats. And the barley malt that I bought, I'm not going to say where I bought it, but apparently I had issues with that because I had an infection both times. I lost both mashes.
With lacto or Clostridium or what kind of
No, it
infection?
wasn't the lacto. It's just sour smelling, and
So what, the
it
butyric Clostridium based? Trying to think of the other one now.
maybe that, but it's something I've not experienced, Joe.
Right.
This is like it's still holding the cap. It's still bubbling. It still looks like a regular mash, and it tastes like one, but it don't smell like one. It's funky.
Right. That may be kind of what happened to Mark. He was asking about, he had a mash that he thought worked out okay, but when he started distilling it, it smelled like old socks tails
Yeah.
from the very get go, and it just got worse and worse from the very get go. And we were trying to figure out what might have happened, to cause that. I'm guessing oils, a lot of organic oils and stuff in there, and maybe
I
put
even
some
took this
Clostridium.
last one up to 190 degrees after the cook in. I took it up to 190 degrees to try to kill off anything. And I sanitized everything, but it was still there in that fermenter somehow.
Well, have to let them know that it could be infected, and for them to contact their supplier, unless a lot of times it gets handed down through 2 or 3 middlemen before it gets to us. And
I've never bought from them before, and I won't buy from them again.
Yeah. Don't want to mention any names, piss anybody off, but
no, I don't
if you run into that, if you run into that, you know that it's probably an infected grain, and if it's consistent,
it
happens a couple of times.
It happens a lot with malt. I mean, usually it's just a lacto or something like that, and
right.
I've got a Kveik yeast that I've been working on for a while, and it has a lacto that tags along with it. And it's funny because I don't usually see it in heavy corn mash, but if I go more toward a oat, barley, wheat, anything more heavy than corn, then it'll pop up at the very back end.
Now, I noticed you're using some Firm Solutions enzymes. Have you tried their, I think it's a glucanase that basically when you work with a lot of wheats and stuff with glucans, that it helps thin those out? It's we were talking about it. Clint was talking about it last week. I think he has some of it and uses it. And anytime that you work with a lot of wheat or rye, especially wheat and rye, you deal with a lot of glucans and others like azolinase, and we're going to talk about a lot of those here in a minute. But matter of fact, let's go ahead now. If you can kind of watch the chat and help me with that, because I'm going to go to full screen and I'm going to show.
I don't know if I can do that on my phone. I'll try.
Oh, you on your phone? Okay.
Yeah, I'm out in the shed. I'm on my phone.
Yeah. So I can't see a lot of their questions when I go full screen, because I'm wanting to show the screen and I want to use the mouse and point and talk and describe things. So I think it'll be pretty much explanatory, and I'll try to flash back and forth to the studio back and forth and watch, but I want to try to go full screen and show just that. And let me see what it looks like on my end. And Will it allow me to share my whole screen? Let's see.
Yeah, next time I'll get on my laptop before I do this. That way I can help out. I can put it on my phone for the comments. And
Let's see. Will it allow me to share everything or just one thing on my entire screen? Awesome. All right, so I am able to share the entire screen. Let me share that. And let's see. All right, now are you seeing all this?
No.
All these charts?
No.
No. Damn it. We'll get it to working. All right, share. Also share system audio. Okay. Okay, this should be it. Now, can you see all these charts here?
Yeah. Yeah, they're really, really.
Well, for you, they're probably small. So anybody on the phone,
kind of, but yeah, somebody else.
Yeah. If anybody on their phone, it's going to be kind of small. Maybe as I talk about them, we can enlarge them. But I'm wanting to talk about it on this chart here. Let me enlarge this chart, and let's see if I enlarge them. Yeah, they go right back into their place. So, does that help you out a little bit?
That's a little better. Yeah.
Okay, so we know that. Well, let's go to just the starches themselves. So, we know that there's three basic starches here, and well, actually, there's four. Cellulose is the other one, but glycogen is from our bodies. This is what animals have, and this is what our insulin breaks down, right? But amylopectin and amylose is primarily what we deal with, and cellulose, which is basically cellulose is just perfect rows. So just imagine all these and just perfect rows above and below each other, just gridded out. And that's what cellulose looks like. But this amylopectin, you can see how it's branched, and the amylose and how it has a little spin to it and a little helix like. These are the basic starches that we encounter when we start breaking down corn kernels and stuff. So let's go to corn kernels. Oh, I've got wheat up here twice, or barley up here twice. I should have had one of these. Should have been corn. Let's see if I can find corn here. There we go.
I don't know if Brian Key's watching or not, but hey, buddy.
So inside, when we start breaking down corn, let's just use corn for an example here. For those that can see, this shows the whole. This is the main thing. There's a lot of other stuff in here that are important, but we're not going to talk about as much. But basically the whole, and then you've got the endosperm, and then you got what's called an heirloom layer. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation of that, but
I'm not going to help you out, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I've never had somebody, a biologist, explain it to me and pronounce it.
Good job, Jeff.
Aileron, yeah, that's it. No,
whatever you say.
ALEURONE, aileron layer. But anyway, this is where the alpha and beta amylase is located inside this corn kernel. So as we heat this corn kernel up, this hull becomes soft, and it protects the whole, it protects the whole kernel and the germ and everything inside. So as it softens up, it's exposing the starches, and once these starches come in contact with water, they start to expand and eventually pop, and that basically exposes all the starches that are inside each of these cells inside this endosperm in here. So once this starts to soften, this amylase releases as well. And if you cook your corn at a certain temperature, or actually if you germinate your corn and malt it, this will actually convert the amylase and beta amylase. Not very much beta at all, and more alpha, but not a lot of beta, which is the reason it doesn't have a high diastatic. But it'll help break those down, and those will convert the starch in a malted grain. If you can keep it below, I think 155, you can actually gelatinize the corn and still take advantage of the amylase that's
I
within
was
it.
going to say you can do corn will gelatinize at 155, 160.
Yep.
If you've got the time to do it, and
Yeah,
that
it
will
takes
actually also not
many.
denature your enzyme.
Yeah, it would take many, many,
On the
many
upper
hours
threshold.
and hours and hours to do, and which is why
Right.
people don't do it that way anymore. But it will work, but it takes a long time, and we're not the most patient of breeds, so we just cook the shit out of it. 185, 90 for
Yeah,
45 minutes.
Thank God for exogenous enzyme.
That's right. And that's why we'll talk a little bit later about modified malts and partially modified malts and unmodified malts.
That's where
and
step matching comes in.
right, exactly.
Back in the day, a lot of the malts were under modified.
Right, and under modified means that basically you malted it yourself, or it wasn't done in a very good malt house, and you've got grains from not malted to partially malted to fully malted all mixed together. So they call that under malted. And I guess if it goes to a good malt house or a reputable place, they malt them, and that's just generally called, modified.
Right.
And then there's always the ones that have none, and it's just unmodified at all, and it's not been converted or nothing's been done with it. So
Joe, in all the years that I've been malting grains, be it corn, wheat, rye, whatever, I actually malted some triticale recently. Cool. And I did a triticale and Amanda Palmer mash. Made a spirit off of that.
Right.
But this time I took and I wanted to malt some, and I wanted to see what the conversion, because I was reading about it, and actually it has a very high DP when malted.
Oh yeah. So does wheat.
Yeah, it's wheat and rye. It's a half and half, and they both are great converters.
I think wheat has even higher than like 6-row barley.
Wheat is red wheat, especially red wheat is up there. I've used red and white both, and they both do really well conversion.
Yep.
The triticale, it's this home malted stuff that I did myself. It converted my mash. I hit a 1067 with it, and I was tickled shitless.
Yeah, that's stoked. I'd be stoked. Yeah, I've malted corn in the past, but with the exogenous enzyme, that's out. I still do wheat malting because I like the flavor of it. When it's malted, it's a little less grassy, and
wheat is amazing.
Yeah, I love wheat. A lot of people don't like wheat and rye because of the glucans, but if you can get past, I do too.
That's why I learned to step mash, because I like both of those.
Yeah, I love wheated bourbon, so I mean I've got to learn the wheat process, learn to use it. And,
I think a lot of times something I got to bring you to. It's I call it the anti-bourbon. It's in a ex-bourbon barrel.
I think the last time I talked to you, we were actually talking about that, but you hadn't done it yet. I think the last time that we were talking, I guess it was in Arkansas.
Yeah, and so it's been in there since 23. 12, 23.
Cool. Well, I guess you had done it then. I guess it was last.
Yeah, I had it in there, but
yeah, we were talking about it.
But yeah, I tried to break all the bourbon rules. I distilled it above 160.
Right. Yeah.
Put it in a used barrel.
Yeah.
And I did add to my all grain mash, 15-gallon mash. I added 2 pounds of Morena sugar.
Yeah, you just had to do it just to break the rules.
I had to. You can't tell it. It's all good.
I like using Morena, and I like using dextrose. Both do quite well. I use a lot of Morena. I get it cheap. Well, I used to get it cheap till the damn Dollar General or whatever the dollar store was I used to get it from realized what they had. Now, I don't know if they realized it when I came in and bought every case they had, or if somebody else knows about it and they just get there before I do, but they never have it anymore. So that sucks. But I keep going by and trying to like, no, we don't have any.
Have you had dry fly wheat whiskey?
What now? Have say it again?
It's dry fly.
No.
Wheat whiskey?
No.
Yeah, this is a straight wheat 3-year-old.
Cool. Oh, I was talking about that. I've never done an all grain other than corn. I've done lots of multi-grain, tons of multi-grain, 4 grain, 3 grain, 5 grain, but, and I guess the only single grain that I've ever done was just corn. I've never done like an all rye, an all wheat, a
Yeah.
barley malt, but that's something I guess I want to do, but I've always just was
I can't
heavy
say I'm much
corn.
different. I've done all corn and I've done all barley, but I've never done an all wheat, never done an all rye. I've done close, but no.
Yeah, yeah, I've done all potato, but just as a grain, I think corn is the only single all grain that I've ever done.
I did an
You
all
know,
rye once.
cool.
I got a hell of a conversion. That was
Now,
2 pounds per gallon on the ground rice, and I got like 1078.
wow, that's cool.
Yeah, but
So
I ground it pretty.
I've often told people, I generally go about 2.5 pounds of grain per gallon. But when you start adding a lot of adjunct grains, you can drop that down to 2. Because you're going to get a lot better conversions out of some of those other grains. That give you a little bit more sugars maybe than just
Right.
the corn. But Mike Frayne and I, we sat down and we broke down. Actually, I've got a little something text file that I did. We did the calculations and stuff, and we figured, at just the average cost for corn, the average cost that, the average everyday person pays for sugar at 70 cents a pound, and, corn at, $10 for a 50-pound bag, just kind of average cost.
Right.
We broke it down, and you can get sugar a lot cheaper out of corn than you can out of a bag.
Oh, you can.
Amazingly. It's amazing. But I guess that's why they use it for fuel. If you could get it from sugar
Well,
easier and cheaper,
yeah. I
and
mean,
cheaper.
Joe,
It,
I can take the crappiest feed corn from the
yeah, yellow
damn.
dent. Just
Yeah, give me that. Let me grind it real fine, and I'll do 2.2 pounds per gallon, 2.25 pounds per gallon,
yeah,
and hit a 1065, 1070.
yeah. That's good conversion. That's perfect conversions. I get about. We were talking about that last week. 106.070. Is about the range I average. I
Right.
don't go real fine. I know it gets a little better when you do go fine, but I'm lazy. I hate waiting for the clear, and I like to mash it through my grain, my brew bag, and let it sit and clear up a little bit that
Yeah,
way. But
not me. I put mine through the brew bag and I put it in milky and I run the shit out of it on propane.
yeah, I'm going to start. I've got a false bottom in this steel, and I'm gonna start hanging a brew bag and distilling on the grain with it,
There you
and
go.
just and seeing how that works out, because they put a false bottom in these things for a reason, and not just for cooking. I'm gonna start seeing if I can distill that way. I've never tried it yet, but
So I've got the air one for the submarine pots
right.
that stirs, but I'm working on right now as a
We
motorized.
talked about the magnetic drive before. If you still are you
We
working on
have
that?
talked about that, but no, I'm looking right now at a motorized drive, but it's going to be able to fit through a 2-inch barrel,
Right.
but have blades on it
Yeah.
that like a fan that's turning.
I think if we could do the magnetic, because the stainless and the copper, it's not not ferrous, very ferrous,
Right.
and should work pretty well through it. But yeah, it'd be pretty interesting. Like a
Yeah, there's
paddle wheel going opposite
right. Yeah.
directions, and it'd work real well in one of those submarine pots, right?
Oh
Have one
yeah,
on
'cause
each end, kind of turning and
right. They're fairly narrow on the flat. I
right,
mean,
right.
they're plenty wide enough to set on a burner or set on a platform. But man, I just sent one of the 50s off to a customer in England, and
Yeah, you might have to use two
I
two
want to 50.
banjos under it. Would probably work well.
Yeah.
Two 10-inch banjos, they'd probably work. But yeah, having some kind of drive to turn those paddle wheels in there, whether it's direct drive or magnetic or hydrostatic, I guess. We get crazy. Yeah, that'd be yeah. Now you see why we call it Ozark Skunk Works, right? It's doing all kinds of interesting things.
That's right.
Innovation, baby. And I like
That's
the
where it's at.
I like the steam whistles too that Alan's using now.
What's that?
The steam whistles.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, anybody that's coming out next weekend can come by our booth, come down Militia Row, and I guess that's what we're calling it now, Militia Row.
Yeah.
Anyway, I will have it hooked up to a little pancake compressor, and y'all can
Awesome.
come by and give it a little toot toot.
Yeah. I think that's something that we kind of talked about a long time ago too. When I moved into this house, this guy that owns this house owned an oil company, and he was a pilot. And I guess when he passed away, you know, there's some stuff in the closet, right? Some boxes and stuff in the basement closet that they didn't fool with and getting out. And inside of it, you know, I had some airplane stuff, you know, regarding the airplane, little handbooks and stuff. And inside I had this whistle, this old steam whistle, you know. And I'm not sure if I talked to you about it, but I've talked about it in the past, how
Right.
cool that would be, you know, to hook up. But I wasn't thinking about putting it on the steam genny, you know, the steam generator. That's
Tom and I are fixing to do one that's on a landry valve. So when you break the connection between your pot and your thumper,
right,
it'll blow off on a steam whistle.
right.
It'll be a smaller one, but yeah, it's something Tom and I have been working on.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, that way you open up, don't have to worry about implosions. See, a lot of people don't realize that when you get done running that steel, you got to open it up somehow. A lot of people rely on those cheap valves that can give out, pressure relief valves and all that. And then the airlock, yeah, those they're cheap and they tend to not work sometimes. So I've always wondered why not just put a regular half-inch valve on there and open it up. You know, it's a lot simpler, cheaper, and you know, but people forget, and that is even better, man. Having a whistle like that, that's awesome. Yeah, great idea.
Well, you know, the steam whistle actually for like people in the craft industry like Alan that's running a jacketed still, you know, with a water jacket with heating elements.
Right.
It's an early warning for them. I mean, it's heating up and it builds up enough pressure to start whistling. That's your sign to go turn your pot down.
Yeah.
You know.
Perfect.
And it's fun. He has fun playing with the lake.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, he's like, people walk by and he's like, you know.
All right. So can you see my mouse? My little cursor? All right, let me enlarge this. Can you see it on this? I probably should have made it larger.
No, I can see the page, but I can't see anything else.
Okay, for those that can't see the mouse, I guess on a PC, hopefully you can, because I was wanting to kind of point. Cause I do this a lot when I'm showing pictures, and I think that they can see it, and all they can see is the damn picture that I got out there. But I'm moving my mouse around like they can see it now. But this is the reason I set all this up, so they can see what I'm talking about. So anyway, these are all just basic starches, right? We got the amylopectin, and that's what we're going to kind of use as our sample here. So this is a typical amylopectin starch. This continues. So it's not just this in the complete starch. This same pattern continues all the way up and down the page. So this is just a dissected part of that starch, because this can be thousands of glucose molecules long with branches, right? So when we use the alpha amylase on here, and you can see this alpha here. Let me go to let me change the picture here real quick so you can see the different amylase here. Now this is the one to the far left is your alpha amylase, and you can see how it has the helixes, and when it breaks back, I think they call that a sheet or a fold. So it's got helixes and folds, and this is your beta amylase, very similar. It's got the helixes as well, less sheets and folds. And this is a Y amylase, but it's very similar to a gluco amylase. So I just put this up there as an example. I do also have This is a glucanase. So you can see it's a little bit different. It looks like a little bit like a cellulase over here, the way it's in a row. But it does have the helixes and the sheets where it folds back on itself. So that's pretty interesting. And we got xylenate. Here's the cellulase. Um, of course, you can see how, cellulose is structured in lines, as I was talking about earlier. It's perfectly in line. And you can see how this cellulase is kind of in line as well. And that's how they work into each other. See, the cellulase will work into cellulose, and as it works in, it comes into contact with this cellulase or the cellulose. And when it comes into contact with it, there's a van der Waals bond that's holding basically these aminos together. Now, on the let me see here on our starches, we've got glycosidic bonds, and those are fairly strong bonds. So it takes a little bit to break those bonds. It either takes acid or heat, a catalyst, to break those bonds. But these van der Waals bonds on these amylases breaks down pretty quickly and easily. So these starches, when we break them out of our corn and everything, they come into contact with this amylase. And when they come into contact, there's a water molecule that gets in between them. And it forces that van der Waals, forces that bond apart, so that amylase breaks off and it debranches these starches at specific points. Now, alpha is pretty random. It's a it's an enzyme where it works from the inside out. So it's breaking things from the inside. And what happens is these starches fall into this amylase, and it gets trapped inside this amylase. And every place where it comes into contact with this amylase, which is an amino acid, it breaks it down. It breaks these starches down where the water molecule touches as well. So the hydrogen basically is a hydrogen ion, a positive ion, and a negative ion that exchange, and it breaks these starches apart, right? So it's in here you can see this alpha amylase is breaking down this. You hear me talk about oligosaccharides and dextrins, okay? Oligosaccharides is just basically anything that is a bond of 3 to about 12 glucose molecules. So here you'll see these 4, aren't affected by this amylase. So, you'll see here a trisaccharide, there's 3. So some break down, like I say, sometimes that alpha will break it down, and like that right there, that's something that a yeast could eat. That's a disaccharide that it's breaking off there, right? You can see there's no longer a bond right there. So that's now a disaccharide. Your yeast can eat that. But some of these, and it will never break it off at the branch. It's for even the endos. Well, I take that back. Only alpha will break it off in the middle at the branch. Your gluco and your beta cannot, because they're exo enzymes. They work from the outside in, right? So this alpha will debranch this amylopectin into many pieces, and that's what we call debranching. So those 3 right there, you'll see where it's broken it off there. There's a green. That's the breaking point that the amylase is coming to contact right here, and then that water molecule touched here and here, and it broke apart, and it broke this starch free. So that's a trisaccharide, what we call a trisaccharide, or a dextrin. That's a limit dextrin. That's very not easily consumed. There are some trisaccharides that your yeast can consume, but most you have a tough time doing it, and it takes a lot longer time to do it. These right here, you can see this is an oligosacharide because it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 still bonded together, and yeast can't touch that. So that's what we call oligosaccharides. So it's breaking it all down and debranching it, but you're getting very little fermentable sugars from it. There's one. There's a disaccharide that just had to get broken off. There's one. Just a few. But look at all the unused, glucose in here. That's how when you drop your hydrometer in and you think, oh, my fermentation is stuck. No, you've got a lot of these these glucose molecules inside your mash that never got broken down. So it still registers as a sugar. It's just not a fermentable sugar, and you'll be stuck from now until ever. If you try to wait and ferment. Now you can always add some glucose, and it will help breaking that down. And that's why glucose is such a great um, exo enzyme,
Right.
because it could go from the outside, and it's a lot better and more does a lot more than just a beta. You can see the beta at the top here, and it alone, you can see without the alpha, this is what a beta does without the alpha. And you can see that it's done pretty much what the alpha would do, but there's, like this string here, you don't see a lot of inner branches being broken up. Now that glucose that works from it, look at it, man, it converts every bit of that into a monosaccharide. And that's just pure glucose molecules. That's all it is, all monosaccharides. So they should show a little further apart so it doesn't look branched anymore, but that's no longer branched. Those are all individual molecules. And when you get to that point, man, you've got a highly converted, like you were talking about, when you get those real high conversion numbers, that's why you're getting such a good conversion, that you've broken everything down. Now you can get conversions, I guess, they have a lot of dextrins in it still as well, but you think, oh, I've got a stuck fermentation, I'm at 1020 and I just can't get it to go any further. pH is good, the temperature's right, I've got good viable yeast, everything seems right, I just can't get it to break down anymore. This is why. And that's some of the probably the biggest misdiagnosed issue with mash is you really didn't, a lot of people don't use the iodine, to test for starch conversions anymore. They just
Right.
they just depend on that hydrometer, and that hydrometer lies to you. It will not tell you what's fermentable and not fermentable. It just tells you how much sugars you got out of it. So, if you don't use enough of the exogenous or exogenous, as I call it, enzymes, or endogenous enzymes, where it's you're getting your enzymes from the actual grain itself, then you're not going to get that complete conversion, and you're going to have a stuck fermentation, and nobody knows why. And it's one of those head scratchers, and that's why. So
One of the biggest things I see is people in general don't know how to calculate how
oh
much.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, even in industry, I mean, you look at a big distillery,
Mm-hmm.
these people are trained to go in and do a certain job,
Right.
and they go in and make whiskey mash every day, but the majority of them probably couldn't tell you how to formulate a mash.
Right. We talked about that, I think, a week or two ago, about calculating it and using 30 as your base number, to try to break it all
Right,
down. And I think Cyrus had a pretty good video on that as well. And just roughly, it doesn't have to be exact, but roughly,
right.
figure out how much degrees Lintner you need, or
I mean,
diastatic power that you
it's
need.
just a little bit of math, but
It's not
once
much.
you
It's not
figure it
bad.
out, I mean, hell, it's rough enough. You can go by how many pounds of malt to throw to how many pounds of raw
Yeah.
grain and make
Yeah.
it
Just
work.
percentages roughly anymore.
Right,
Just, you need 10% of this to
right.
do it, or
It
20% to
ain't
get it
rocket
done. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah,
But again, if you use the liquid high temp and the liquid glucose, that all becomes a moot point these days. So
right. It
that's
does.
why I always try to use those along with, all my malts. So if you're not getting it, and also we can use 2-row now instead of 6, and we can get that better flavor that we like,
Right.
and not
And see,
really.
that's another thing that people don't think about is an unmalted whiskey versus a malted whiskey.
Right.
I'll take the malted whiskey every day,
Every day. Now,
hands
have you
down.
ever used the LME, like the liquid light malt extracts?
I have. I've used it in beer and I've used it in spirits.
Very
Um,
sparingly.
I
I've
want to use.
experimented
I'll
with it.
just give me some grain.
Yeah, I've experimented with it. Using it with grain and stuff, and and I've discovered that you want to use it very sparingly.
Yeah.
So it's amazing how these starch molecules here get entangled inside these amylase. Now, I will say, after this amylase entangles with that starch branch and it breaks off, it basically denatures itself. So once it does that conversion, it's no longer usable. So that's why there's so many twists and folds in this, and each little twist and fold that come into contact with this will debranch. And remember, alpha is the only thing that's going to debranch this main branch. All this smaller stuff, it won't do it. So that's why we have to have that alpha to break it all up from the inside. That's an endo enzyme.
Yeah, it comes down to firewood, and then everything. The other one is the fire.
Right. Yeah. Now you'll also see that there's beta amylase, alpha amylase, glucoamylase. Now you also have a glucosidase, a glucanase that we were talking about earlier. Now this is the one that works really well on like rye and wheat, where it gets a lot of the glucans, make it really gummy. And this glucanase.
I've got one from Seb Star. It's a
pulinase is what it's basically. They're all pulinases, but
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it helps break all that gumminess up, and just like breaking up the gel in corn, like alpha breaks up that gelled corn. This glucanase breaks up the gelatinous, I guess, glucans in a lot of your wheat and rye and stuff that get real gummy, and oats even gets real gummy. So
it's crazy though. Even though using the enzymes and getting that mash thinned out as thin as possible, if it's a high glucan mash, you dip your paddle or something in there and it's just like strings off of it. It's thick.
Yeah,
even when it's converted, it's thick.
Yeah, even after. So this glucanase helps clear that out. And I know that Firm Solutions, they have a really good pulinase. They don't call it a pulinase.
It's genius.
I can't remember which one it is. Clint and I talked about it. He uses it. I've not tried it yet, but I'm definitely going to get some and start using it, because I like using wheat.
Yeah.
Not as much rye, but love using wheat. Now, I will say, a lot of times you'll see things talk about breaking down in the alpha 1,4 or 1,6. And basically, that's just telling you where it's breaking it down in relation to the carbon molecules. So the first carbon molecule gets it in the fourth. So it's breaking it between the first and the fourth, or the first and the sixth. And these are just, let me enlarge that so everybody can see it. These are just carbon molecules, see? And it breaks it here, and it breaks it here. So that's alpha is breaking it at the one spot and the 4 where these are bonded. So, and this is just the carbon. So 1 and 6 here. So you can see here, this is a pectinase branch. This is a branch in your pectin, and it's breaking it right at that branch. So that's what your alpha's doing. It helps debranch those. Now, if it's just an amylase, an amylose, it's just going to be straight. It's not going to be branched at all. So you can probably get by with less alpha, but still going to be essential. But yeah, it's amazing. I wanted people to see just how this works. So how we start from endosperm, which basically you can look at this as like an embryo. This is like an embryo, and when you start germinating this or cooking this, germinating it, it softens this hull, and all this endosperm here, all this does is it gives energy to the embryo to grow, right? And that's what it's doing. And in this amylase that's naturally in endogenic enzyme will help convert this to energy to help that embryo grow. So it's just, seeds just like a little baby grow. It's being fed, and I guess in our bodies, our cells, that it works on the same exact level, but it's just a human cell instead of a seed. But it's amazing how all this works. And I guess down here it talks about this chart. Let's see, let me enlarge it here. Cellulose, sourced from plants, and beta glucose and this is the bond 1,4 that I was talking about. And here's the shape I was talking about. Yeah, this is in a row. So this is what your cellulose looks like. And cellulase will be very similar, laid out in a lot of rows as well, like I was talking about. And then here, of course, is your amylose and your amylopectin with mega branches and the glycogen. That's in animals, and this is what insulin will break down in our bodies. The insulin in our bodies help break all this down for our energy. Just the same. So our bodies, when we consume this starch, our saliva, we've got alpha enzymes in our saliva that start breaking it down and throughout our systems. It's going to break all this down into sugars and energies that our bodies and our cells can actually use and consume, just like yeast. They can't consume it on a complex level like this, neither can our bodies. So it has to be broken down just the same. And it's amazing, how the science works on everything. But I just wanted to kind of, illustrate all this for people that don't understand what we're talking about when we talk about how these enzymes capture these starches and convert them and break them down. And this is scientifically how it breaks them down. Now, it can be explained on a much higher scientific level.
Right. I mean, keeping it simple, I was just explaining to my wife not too long ago. I was talking to Jen, and it's like we were having potato soup, and it was really thick. And I started eating it, and I'm putting the spoon back in. I'm eating, I'm putting the spoon back in, and all of a sudden it gets really thin. And I told her, I said, you know what that is?
That's from your saliva.
It's the enzymes.
Right, from your saliva.
It thins your soup out.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's crazy.
Science is awesome, and everybody hopefully learns something tonight, man. This is important stuff, and this explains malting and why we malt, and because this was the only way that you could get the alpha and the beta amylase, right? This is it. Right. This is what we used to depend on solely.
And then there's different ways to manipulate that malt when you're mash process. There's so many different ways to do things, and none of them are wrong. There's just different ways.
Yeah, as long as you end up with alcohol at the end, you did nothing wrong. There's some certain things that you can do that be more productive, that may contain more flavor, that may be more, efficient and cost effective.
That's the thing. You listen to some of the things that Alan talks about with, the old school, pre-prohibition whiskeys.
Yeah,
they were inefficient on their malting, and so there was a lot of unfermented starch. There was some unfermented starch in their whiskeys, and it contributed to the flavor profile.
Right, so, and a lot of people don't realize that, and we talk about all the time in here. There's chemical reactions going on the whole time. That's aging. You're not just getting flavors that the barrel produce. You can put it in a jar or in a bottle and let it age inside that bottle. And there's certain chemicals in esterification where acids and oils are working with each other and against each other to create a lot of these esters and flavors that we get. And
this happens totally different than it was back in May when I got it.
Exactly. A lot of the leftover starches and stuff that they had back then were doing things that we don't get now because we're super efficient. But, maybe efficiency, sometimes isn't the best thing, because you definitely don't want your still to be super efficient, or you're going to get a neutral every time, right? So, we have to.
One of the things that I try to do with a lot of the distilling practices that I do are single pass reflux.
Yeah.
Most of the product that I sell, you can run it either way. You can run it pot still, and I'll build thumpers and all that crap too. But I'm just saying, a single pass reflux, you can achieve really, really close to double pass pot if you do it right.
And just single run straight off with just more water, more flavor, and
Right.
coming off at 120 or 30 instead of 160. That
Exactly.
just that change, can and you want to do different things different ways,
It depends
and
on what
that's
you're
why there's
chasing.
yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. Like a brandy, I tend to try to do my
Single
brandies
castle.
that way. This watermelon with the very delicate flavor it has, and how much of it's bonded with the water, I'm going to try to defeat that distilling process as much as possible. I'm going to try to come off as low as I can, but I'm going to still go through my
I
I'm going
think
to probably
that's where calling yourself a distiller comes into play. I mean,
absolutely
you know, there's a lot of different ways to do things for a lot of different products. Um, and to be able to run that gambit, that's what makes you a distiller.
right. Now on this chart, this is the chart that we use a lot, and a lot of people don't realize it, but this is also a step mash chart. So as what Wayne was talking about
Yeah.
earlier, I called you out. What Wayne was talking about earlier, bringing up your temperatures, as you hit each of these thresholds, this is when you're going to get this conversion. This is when the enzymes that are natural to these
Right.
different grains
That's the whole
are
key right there.
work.
Is as you come up, you reach these enzymes. You've got a protein rest, an acid rest.
Right,
You know,
exactly. Now the protein rest is um, basically to cut down on the haze, so you don't have like a milky,
yeah,
hazy
it's not
looking
really all
beer.
that critical for us.
Right, right. But it's still a process, and it still has, other than the haziness, there is still some chemical things that are happening chemically in there
It
that
still
you
helps
do
clear things
benefit.
out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. So you're still getting some benefit from those stops, even
it
though
don't hurt.
yeah, it definitely doesn't hurt
If
for
you're
sure.
step matching, you're going to go through it anyway.
Exactly. Yep, for sure. So a lot of the beer makers, when they start, you know, building a mash, as they say, you know, they're amazed how we go backwards. How we start at the high temp and then work our way backwards to when we add, our uh,
Right.
malted grains and all that to take the benefit of the malts that are within them. And they're like, wow, because they've never used corn. They don't use
Yeah, we don't
corn.
really use corn. Not a
Yeah,
lot. No.
yeah. And if they
And most
do, I
of it's
guess
white corn.
they either do the 8 hour or 10 hour process like we were talking about earlier at low temps, or they're definitely gonna it takes a long time. It takes a long time to gelatinized corn at low temps, but you can do it. I think 145, 55 is the cutoff. Well, let's see. We got this chart right here in my face. um, yeah, this doesn't necessarily show. Doesn't show gelatinization temp, but I think
Yeah.
155 in that range, because I know that's about the same temperature that the powder amylase,
Well,
155 to 60.
It's funny. Different people have different temp ranges that they like to do their mash in. For
Right.
their enzymes. Um, Being a beer brewer, 148 seemed to be like the sweet spot.
That's your honey.
Get
Yeah.
the best of both worlds from the malt. And I talked to Alan, and Alan's like he likes 152 or 3 somewhere in
Yeah.
there.
Anywhere between 145 and 155 in this green
Yeah,
range here.
you're good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you're good.
So if you can't remember, the 142 or 147 or the
The
150,
best thing is to get used to what it feels like on your
right.
finger
And
when
if
you dip
if
the
you
mash.
look at this, this chart, if you go from 150 straight up, you're gonna hit pretty much everything except oats. You know, and well, you're not hitting sorghum. You're not going to hit your long grain rice. Two things we very rarely use. Arrowroot, never. So at 150, you're going to hit pretty much all these except the barley. And that's going to be your 135 to 140 range.
But
140.
you've already converted it because you went past that. So
Right. And well, the barley malt is yeah, it separates barley and barley malt. So
right.
yep. So step mashing, if you want to do it separately, you can do your corn, but it's really, really hard. It's thick, thick, thick.
I need to do I need to get out here one weekend and do a mash in, do a live on Facebook where
Yeah,
I do a corn mash first and then cool it off and bring it back
right.
up with step mash.
That's the way to do it, because I've thought about both ways, and I've done the reverse step, and I've never done the forward step because I've never been a beer maker. I've never done just
One of
beer.
my favorite things to do is like the night before that I want to start my fermentation. I'll cook the corn the night before and let it set all night.
Right.
And then when I come out the next morning, it's about 140,
Yep.
and I can add some water and cool it down and start mashing in.
Cool. I know it's gonna be a paradox if I switch to this. Oh, we can see it forever and ever. All right, that's pretty cool. So I'm glad I was able to share the whole screen at once and do all that. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to see these questions, but we're going to try to go over some of those now. I was thinking to heat my corn up, get soft, then mash it. Yep. Um, what are your thoughts on that? Grinding your corn after it's soft or when it's still hard? I think
I grind my shit when it's hard.
I think when it's hard too, because I think
I don't want to deal with cleaning up afterwards on a wet corn.
Yeah. I mean, I know that my grinder is rated for wet and dry, but it's a mess, and I don't think I'm going to get all that ground up that I want to, and it's going to be hard to tell how coarse of a grind I've got if it's just going to be all pasty. So
even with my grinder, I can get mine set. It's one of the blue ones, the Chinese with
same one.
Hey, you can get it set where you can do even a good hard corn. You can set it where you can do it on a single pass. You just gotta feed it slow.
Now, even that, I think red wheat's probably the hardest fucking substance known to man beside a diamond. That shit can get pretty. I don't know how many. I could go through corn pretty quick in the old days on blenders and stuff. I could wreck those out pretty well. But if I didn't malt the wheat, cracking that hard red winter wheat, man, it did a number on those blades. Corn.
Yeah, I noticed it with mine. If I'm doing corn, I've got it grinding it really fine, like I like it, and then I try to go to wheat. I got to back that up because it'll be like,
And also for somebody that's not gotten a grinder or just thinking about getting one, be careful because those things will allow you to grind your grinding wheels together. So you don't want to go too tight, or you're actually going to get some metal coming off in there.
And be sure to lubricate the little ball and that's behind the spring on your adjustment knob. Yeah, you got to remember to do that. Wear those things out in no time.
All right, so Dustin, Amanda Palmer, blue on one, so I doubt it takes that much. No, Amanda Palmer's got some good flavors to it. It's got a lot of different.
Amanda Palmer is my favorite corn, hands down.
Yeah, I bought some of that off you last year.
Year before last, I think. Yeah,
might have been the year before last. Yeah, I guess it was year before last. Yep.
Amanda Palmer's really good. Waspy Valley, I really like. Ohio Blue, I like.
Well, Hawken Green. Have you done anything with the green yet? I want to try it.
I haven't, but I want to, and I want to try the Argentinian orange.
Yeah, I do too. I've heard both of those are good. I've not tried either one of those.
I heard that the orange is a low yield, but I don't care.
Now,
I'm out flavor.
What are your thoughts on comparison to the Ohio Blue and the Hopi Blue?
Hopi Blue is way more nutty. Ohio Blue is more floral.
Sweet floral.
I'm Ohio Blue is hands down over Hopi.
Yeah.
That's just me though.
Right. Well, I mean, combining the two to get a little nutty and some florals, different notes.
I've been mixing a lot
That's
of.
That's the beauty of Amanda Palmer. You get a lot of those kind of together, at once.
Yeah. What I'm bringing you is I had a bunch of Jimmy Red, and I was mixing Amanda Palmer and Jimmy Red to balance out the grain profile.
Right.
And so it's Amanda Palmer, Jimmy Red, and red wheat.
Right. Now I've heard not only heard, I've tasted a lot of the Bloody Butcher, and I know a lot of people don't like the Bloody Butcher because of its oiliness and its earthiness and all that, but sour mashed, after that first mash, it's not so bad.
Right.
It's actually, you can combine that with some other stuff when you start throwing it on top of your sour
Yeah,
mash.
Brian T does a real good job with that, Jimmy.
So does yeah, so does
He's talking
Jeff.
about the Bloody
Jeff
Butcher.
does a good job with it. He's given me several quarts of that. He has a well, he's got it weeded too, so that always helps. And that helps a lot. So let's see what other questions we got. No, that's a different Amanda Palmer. That's Amanda, not Palmer. Trying to think. Shit, he was thinking Amanda Palmer was the one on the Moonshine Show. No, that's a different Amanda. Amanda Palmer is a corn. It's a variety of corn, and it's a mix of corn that Alan Bishop came up with
Right.
years ago that combines a lot of different corns into one. And instead of, his goal was to try to get a profile from one corn that you get from mixing multiple corns. And
I think he created the ultimate whiskey corn.
yeah, he created really, really good corn, and it's a great corn to, like mix with others. So if you wanted to do like an Amanda Palmer and a Ohio Blue to get the Ohio
Right.
Blue to add to that all the profiles from Amanda Palmer.
I get mine from my buddy Nate Briscoe over at Briscoe Farms there in Missouri. He grows that. He grows Ohio Blue, and I think he grew a white corn this year and some Cherokee White Eagle, red wheat, and some rye as well.
Yeah. So Amanda Bryant is the gal on the show. That's Amanda Bryant. So can't think of her name here for a minute. You got to call her Amanda Brennan. It's not that yeah. I'm sure Jay would love the sound of that though.
She's a sweetheart.
Yeah, she is. All right, let's see what else we got. I think this guest is part of the distillery too. Yeah. Wayne is runs those Starch stills. He makes a lot of still parts and does quite a bit of distilling and has been doing it for quite some time and has a very advanced knowledge of it. One of the few guys that we can sit and talk about a lot of this advanced science stuff. That's why I like getting with Wayne and Alan and Clint and a few of us so we can sit and chat about all this stuff. I love it. I love the science part, and I hope a lot of you all learn some things tonight. And
I'm getting ready. I've been growing herbs. I've got wormwood. I've got lemon balm. I've got anise hyssop. I'm gonna have to order some anise, green anise, and I got to order some other herbs. But there's an absinthe coming up.
I was going to say you're about to do the voodoo distillation, man. The used to be illegal.
Yeah.
Crazy as it may seem. All right, here's a good question. So, how did the old timers make their own amylase before they needed enzymes to help? They used malts, and they've understood the process and what was actually happening almost since soon after microscopes were invented. So they were able to isolate, look at, and figure out what was going on in there. And probably in the 1800s, probably, I'm guessing. I think, yeah, I'm probably wrong. Trying to think, the 1700s, is that when they came out with the microscopes?
I ain't sure.
I'm not either. I think it was early 1700s, but they started learning that the enzymes. They knew a lot about enzymes, and I mean, even natives, like in Africa and some, a lot of third world areas, were using spit to break down and make beers and wines with. They would get all the women of the tribe, and they'd combine spit in the fermentation.
They might not know why it worked.
That's right.
But they know what worked.
They knew what what resulted from it, right? But
Right.
yeah, they think
And
about the malt.
we got a lot of folks that are like that too. They're, you know, well, I don't know why it did what it did, but it did what
Right,
it did.
right, and you don't really have to know that unless you're inquisitive. I mean, you don't have to know, what makes
It
all
can
this
be as
tick.
simple as complicated as you want it to be.
That's exactly right. And I tell people that from the very get go. This can be as simple as following a recipe and doing nothing else, but just following a simple recipe to the T. And I can give you a recipe in Soak and Wayne. If you follow it to the T, you will make some good ass product. You'll make some good wines, you'll make some good
Right?
beers, and you'll make some great brandies and whiskeys, and you won't have to know nothing else. Just
Right?
follow the recipe and that's it. And that's the way most moonshiners did, for many, many generations is they just followed the old recipes, and they did what their grandparents did and what they were taught. And it's been passed down for generations. That's why a lot of these recipes are so coveted, and they hold them close to their hearts is because, that was their science. That's all they knew. That's they knew that whatever, no matter what, they can make the best damn corn whiskey by doing this exact recipe. They didn't get into a lot of different other recipes. They didn't get into rum making or tequila making or doing other things, but they could make the best damn corn whiskey ever, unless, of course, they grew up in the Caribbean and they were making molasses and they were making rum. They were probably using spit, as an enzyme and
Right?
wild yeast to ferment and a lot of spit has been used in brandies and breaking down, fruits and vegetables. A lot of
Well,
places for a long period.
Joe, you hear a lot of people talk about adding a pound or two of malt corn on top of your mash or malt rye on top of your mash.
Right,
Well, there's your yeast right there.
right,
That's a hell of a yeast culture that's on a pound of uncooked, malt corn or
right,
malt rye or malt
right.
wheat.
Yep. Yeah, photo bombed. Looks just like her mom.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean,
All right,
asked
I'm gonna
before
have
about
to
this.
hop off here. I got to go deal with some stuff, but
All right, brother. Well, I'm glad
I
you hopped
appreciate
on
you
here
having
with
me
us.
on, Joe. It was great.
I was glad
And
you were able to jump on with us and help me out, explain some of this stuff, and give some of your perspective. And I definitely look forward to seeing you this next weekend.
oh yeah, looking forward to it. I got something for you, buddy.
All right, brother. We'll see you then.
All right, man.
Take it easy.
Bye.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Yeah, it's great having Wayne. Wayne and Alan are real good buddies that y'all met. For those that didn't know Alan, y'all met him a couple of weeks ago on here this past week, I guess. Both very knowledgeable. Wayne does a lot of steel work. Actually, I think I've got some stuff right here behind me on the desk. But he does a lot of stuff, man. He's made um, he's made a lot of innovative things, like a lot of whiskey heads that have deflagnators built inside of it. Trying to think of the name that he's given them. And if my mind was right, I'd remember it right off the bat, but I can't remember all the names. But anyway, he's come up with a lot of innovative things and really cool and some top-notch work. And if you see a lot of stuff on top of Alan Bishop's, a lot of the onion heads and things like that. I can't believe they're on the tip of my tongue, all the different things he's made, but I should have got him to talk about that while he was on. Maybe we'll get him on again sometime. We'll talk about steels and steel parts and just pretty much steels instead of the mash part. But I'm going to try to go ahead and field these questions and get us out to 11. So you may ask before about the sprouting the corn to get at it. Or saw can heat to high heat to get it to. All right, let me go back to the screen here if I can. And hopefully this gets you back. Okay. Now, we were talking about the malting process instead of cooking. Now, when you malt this, see this thing called a radicle here. This is this little root that comes out. They call it a radicle. So when you malt this corn and this little root taproot comes out, it's called the radicle. They call it a tip cap here, but most people call it the radicle, and it starts here and it comes out. So once this little, let me enlarge that for you so everybody can see what I'm talking about here. This is the tip cap. This is like a little root that comes out here, the radicle. So when we malt this, the malting process, of course, starts with water, right? Soaking it in water. And what we do that for is we're going to soften this hull on the outside, right? Because we can't get to anything inside, because this protective cover is what's used to protect this seed in the soil until the spring rains come, right? So it drops in the fall and it'll stay in the ground as this husk and hull, and then the spring rains come and start softening this up. And as soon as it starts softening this up, the amylase in this aileron layer, aileron, I don't know how to pronounce it. That's pretty good a guess as any, I guess, till I guess I could do AI could tell me how to pronounce it maybe. But anyway, a lot of that's stored in the alpha and beta amylase, stored in this layer. So once this softens up and water gets to it, it activates it, right? And it starts converting these starches and breaking them down into energy, just like we were talking how insulin breaks down that glycogen, that big, huge, complex starch with branches everywhere, right? Let me show it to you here. I want everybody to, yeah, here we go. This one here. See how, and that goes on and on and on. This is the whole thing. This is just a section of it, and all these, because these continue. This is just probably 60. This can go 8,000 long, right, on complex ones, and the same on your amino acids. Let me see. See, these amylase, they go on and on and on. This isn't the whole thing. This is just one segment of it. Okay, it just does this all around. So all these starches come into that, and they get entangled. They get broken off, and that's how it debranches. It's amazing how that works. But let's get back to the point here. So as this gets wet, these enzymes are released, and it starts feeding these starches, and these starches feed the germ. This is the embryo, like we were talking, just like a little baby. So it starts feeding the growth of this embryo, and it sends this growth down to this radicle. This radicle comes out into a taproot, and it starts growing down into the ground, right? So it's going to start pulling nutrients from the ground. So it's going to rely on this starch to give it the energy to create this root, and to also get rid of this shell, and to also create this plumule will come up, and it'll create a sprout. And once the sprout comes out, and once that sprout reaches the sunlight, then it doesn't use as much of this anymore. It's using both until it uses all this up. But then it starts converting the light and photosynthesis into the energy that promotes the growth that really grows the plant, right? So this is just the starch that's used to get it to the point where we can begin photosynthesis. And this is a little biology lesson, but I want everybody to kind of understand the basics on how all that works. So when you explain it, yeah, they didn't. Yeah. Most of the white dog, it's really hard to get a good taste of white dog. That's why a lot of people don't like moonshine and just straight corn liquor off the tap. Is, like I've said, 20 to 40% of the taste is what you distill. 60 to 80% of the flavor is what the barrel does, and the esterification of the oils and acids after it's distilled. So and time, so it's both the barrel and the chemical process. And there's Clint coming in late. I'm sorry, brother, I didn't see you come in here. I'd have brought you up here too. Sebflow, yeah, that's the pollinase we were talking about. And I couldn't. Cephalon was the one I was trying to think of. But yeah, the visco that changed the viscosity. So those are both polonases, and those, yeah. I wish I see. I wasn't able to. I wasn't able to see the desktop and chat while I was going over all that, because all I can see is my desktop when I show you the desktop. That's the only way I can do it, to where I can show everybody all those and and point to each and how they interwork. I just thought it'd be a pretty neat way to illustrate. Did y'all like it that way? And I wasn't able. I was next time I'm going to be able to watch the chat on a different PC, so we can like show different. I guess Wednesday, if y'all were here, we showed a little bit of a movie segment that one of our friends in Florida shared with us about how they harvest sugarcane, and that was pretty interesting. But yeah, so anytime you work with the rye and the wheat and the oats, it gets real gummy, and those are glucans. And there's glucanase, and glucanase is just one of the polonases. There's quite a few polonases out there, glucanase being one of them, and I'm sure the Sebflow and the Visco are all polonases, and probably one or both could be a glucanase. I think all glucanases are polonases, but not all polonases are glucanases, because there's different polonases that do different things. Let's see, I don't know if I have that on my little chart there. Let's see. How do I do that? Yeah, here we go. Nope. Nope. Yep. Hopefully y'all can see. Someone tell me right now if what you're seeing is my desktop, or if you're still seeing the StreamYard. So right now you can see me in the StreamYard in this infinity square here. So when I minimize that, can you all see just my desktop right now with all those illustrations? Because I want to make sure that I'm doing it right. That was the desktop. Thanks, brother. Okay, because I want to make sure that when I do minimize it, I'm just not minimizing StreamYards and not showing that. Yeah, I thank you, Clint. I couldn't think of a Sebflow, but that's definitely something that if you use wheat a lot, I'm gonna be getting some. Um, if you use wheat and rye, I don't use as much rye, but I use a lot of wheat and oats. So to get rid of the glucans, that's the gumminess, and it's a mess. A lot of people say, it's a mess. I don't see how you work with that. Well, these enzymes break that down just like alpha does to gelatinized corn, right? So it's the same process. It's just a different enzyme. Definitely appreciate you, Clint. You got here late, brother. I was calling your name. I was like, "Are you in here, Clint?" I was going to try to bring you on with Wayne, so you could watch some of the chat and answer some of these questions while I had. Because when I got my full screen up, I can't see the chat. But I'm going to fix that. I'm going to log on to with one of my alts for my game alt. I've got a game alt that I use for gaming, so I can use that to log on to Facebook with and watch the stream and actually see the chat just by watching the stream. So I'll be able to do that and do more of this because I really like being able to share my desktop with movies like I did on Wednesday. I enjoyed that. I think a lot of you did too. It's kind of cool sitting back and watching some of this. I'm also going to get like Wayne, he's talking about maybe doing a little video on his step mash process for making his beer, stepping forward instead of back like a lot of us do. A lot of us step mash in reverse. We start with the corn, and of course, then we cool it and wait forever for it to cool. And then we start adding our malted grains and stuff like that. Where you can also step mash. Most of the step mash process in the beer making goes forward. So it starts at a low temperature and builds temperature as you go. So it's totally opposite of what most moonshiners were taught and most distillers were taught, unless you learn beer making. And the reason being is because of the exogenous or exogenous enzymes that we use nowadays. We really don't need to follow that process as much, and because most of the malts we get are completely modified. You know, they're converted very well, and they have a high diastatic, and really don't need to depend on the forward step process. And also, like the protein rest we were talking about, and acids, the verification rest, and all the different rests, those become less important in distilling than in beer making. But we also want to make good beers, and making a really good beer without the hops makes for a really top-notch whiskey too. So don't let, you know, a lot of them don't want to let these secrets out, but you know, step mashing and like we were talking about, you know, a lot of people do corn, try to do it separate, but doing your corn first and then lowering the temperature and then starting all over, you know, doing your, you know, alpha and beta and thinning it out and letting it sit, and then letting it cool, and then begin your step mashing process from 100 on up, you know, and then step mashing in the rest of your grains is a pretty smart way of doing that as well. And then, you know, probably one of the reasons he makes a top-notch product. So, you know, because some of his whiskeys and stuff, it's the best you're going to drink. I mean, you're not going to, you know, buy stuff that's, you know, off the shelf any better. You know, they might have a bigger name and stuff, but you know, there's a lot of guys that you know, we've done this so long, we can turn out a pretty good product, but you know, that's handcrafted, you know, it's, if we tried to sell these bottles, now we don't sell it by name and all that, like a lot of stuff gets done on the market, but a lot of the handcrafted stuff, man, it's you know, a lot of the craft distillers make a really top-notch product. It's just, you know, the time and effort and that it and cost it takes to make it on a small scale like that. You'd have to, you know, charge $300-400 a bottle to make it profitable, right? Like they do, but they do it on a large scale, and it's not as good. So, but let's see what other questions we got here. Man, I'm eating corn every night, and yeah, it kills me to have this corn in my teeth. I've been eating it every night. We got some corn here, fresh. I guess is that GMO peaches and cream look-alike. It's not true peaches and cream, but it's yellow and white mixed, and probably a GMO, which I don't mind. A lot of people have issues with, but good stuff, man. We're getting it 20 cents an ear, so we've been eating the hell out of corn, putting it up, and got a lot frozen. And I have a lot of hamburger out over the 4th of July. They had sell on hamburger, $2.99, $3.49 a pound. So I was like, hey, let's get a bunch of that. No, honey, we don't have room in the freezer. She didn't want to put it up. And I was like, oh, we got to. It's cheap. You know, you never know. You never know. So I ended up buying about 30 pounds of burger. The thing I did, shit's high as fucking steak now, man. It's $5-6 a pound. So we got plenty of burger put away. And yeah, when it happened, she's like, okay, you win. I was right. But I do like to stock up on things like that, because you never know, especially these days. All right, so I think we can just stop life by letting it dry out and then water it again, and it goes back to growing. Yep, that's right, brother. Yep. Welcome back, Kimbo. I'm probably, 50 minutes late on that, but I'm glad you're back, brother. Yeah, now the step mashing process is basically for brewing, and when you want to use modified malts and start at the low temp and work your way up. I'll try to put together a little step mash instructional and include it in the files. You'll have to give me some time, because I am going to type out instructions on how to step mash from beginning to end, and And we'll leave out a little bit of the science stuff that we talked about tonight. That's not as critical, but I just wanted everybody to see the illustrations and how that worked. And it's amazing, how those starches get trapped in that amylase, and how, one little molecule gets in between them, and it uses that to snap and break those, glycosidic bonds that are pretty strong bonds. And, the van der Waals bonds, and the, holding the amino acid strings together. All that amazes me, and I love the science part of it. And some people, that may go in one ear out the other, but at least you've been exposed to it, and you can see what's happening on a molecular level, atomic level, to break these things apart and make it happen. And explain why a lot of times our hydrometers fool us. They don't tell us how many of these got debranched and how many monosaccharides and disaccharides we have, which is what your yeast really want to stay happy. They can eat some trisaccharides, they're not happy, they give off flavors, and it takes a lot longer for it to do. But anything beyond a tri, it doesn't do, and it won't do all trisaccharides. It depends on what's bonded together. So if you have a fructose and 2 glucose, and it might not do that so well. But most of your fructose, like your sucrose, like your table sugar, that's 1 molecule of glucose and 1 molecule of fructose, and they're bonded together, and they're bound together by dehydration. So they're both floating as monosaccharides in a solution of liquid water, but when they dry out, they bond together. And so that forms sucrose, right? 1 glucose and 1 fructose makes a sucrose, and it's a disaccharide. And your yeast will eat the hell out of that. That's table sugar, right? So your yeast will eat the hell out of that. That's a disaccharide. But anything beyond that, when it starts getting into trisaccharides or 3 glucose molecules together, it slows down the process, and it's tough for them to wrap their jaws around it. It's literally at jaws, but we try to imagine a little Pac-Man coming through, and it just can't get you, right? But that, I like breaking it down on that level, so people do understand, what's going on. And sometimes when you drop that hydrometer in there, wow, I got 108. I got a damn good conversion. I got 107.5. Man, that's awesome conversion, right? So, that's optimal. What Wayne's getting on, especially the all grain stuff with a lot of the adjunct grains, that's, generally get a little bit higher on those. It's why, I generally do 2.5 pounds per gallon on corn. But when you start adding a lot of sweet wheat and oats and barleys, especially malted barleys and things of that nature, you're going to get, better conversions and high diastatic, so you can get by with just a little bit less pound weight, so you can cut it down to 2 pounds per gallon. Right? So that's why a lot of times I'll say, 2.5 to 3 on corn, and 2.5 to 2, depending on how much malted grains you're using. So if I were to do like an all malt, or or an all wheat or something like that, with exogenous or malted, I'm going to use less pounds. I'm going to probably use 2. So, and I'm going to use that 7 flow. So I'm going to make a note to get some of that. But yeah, step mashing is. I'm going to make a guide and a little step by step. Richard, well, you can start at, well, what you try to do is you gelatinize your corn. So if step mashing generally is beer making without corn. The step mash process has always been something that's been predominantly done with just the other grains, everything but corn, and to make beer. But they found that you can step mash and include corn in it, and it makes for a better quality mash. Of course, that's an opinion. Some people say no, it's not better, and most would say probably yes, it's better. Some would say no. Some people don't like a malted liquor, and some people, like what Wayne and I were talking about, some people do. So it just depends. Some people don't like the yellow label angel. Some people do. Some people don't like a lot of things other people like. So we try to deal in less facts. When we talk about this science, that's facts. And I love the factual part of it. So there's certain things that we deal with that are factual, but like Wayne said, we were talking about, you know, it doesn't matter what you do when you arrive at that drip of alcohol. If you've got a good drip of alcohol, right? You arrived at that point. But there's a lot of ways that you can get more of those drips, better tasting drips, more efficient drips that cost you less. So that's things that you can deal with and change, but you're still getting the drip. So you can't tell somebody that's getting a good drip of alcohol that they're doing it wrong because they're getting a good drip of alcohol. But there are ways to make it more efficient, make it better, get more of it, and that's where differing opinions come into play. So it's but taste and everything like that. It's but it was generally done for beer making. But to include corn, like we talked about, you can gelatinize corn. I think it's in the 145, 55 range. I think it's on this chart here. Let's see. I think it's on this chart. I think corn. Let's see. We're on corn maize. Yeah, up to 175 you can get before you start denaturing the alpha in it. But like at 145-ish, hit the low point of this range here. That's when you can start getting, and you can do it in this range here at 155, like we were talking about, the upper level of this range, and a lot of temperatures that people do that. But it takes many, 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 did I mention how many hours, 8 to 10, 12 hours it takes, depending on the corn and the grind to get it gelatinized versus 90 minutes, at 190, so you can do that. You can step mash and do your corn, as it gets to that temperature, you'll gelatinize it. But at the same time, you're going to be past, see right where it shows here, your barley malt. Okay. So if you've got barley malt in this step mash process, you're going to have to go right here. And that's going to be in the range here. So, you can't get up beyond 155 or you're going to denature the enzymes in your barley malt. So, that's going to be the highest temperature that you can, and you can gelatinize corn at that, but it takes many, many, many hours. And these days it's why, we've got really heavily modified malts and that we can do the reverse. So we can cook our corn higher and then do a reverse step, which basically it's not like the step mash process. It's kind of a reverse step, and you're not getting the same protein rest, but you can stop and do these rests as you cool. They're just not as effective. So with the step mash process, some people do their corn separately and gelatinize and cook their corn and add their alpha, and let it start thinning out. And when it starts getting to, the cooler temperatures that you would get to when you do the step mash, then you can start adding water and the grains that you do in the step mash process and start bringing it up again and do your protein, your acid rest, and your saccharification range, which is just basically saccharification range, where it starts turning sugars and converting your sugars and getting your sugars converted. But in the gray here, that's when everything gets denatured. So you get about above 175, you're going to denature everything. But barley malts, they get totally, you're going to denature barley malts at 160. You're going to, like the powdered alpha, 155, 60. That's it. Anything beyond that, and it's not going to work anymore. So anything below it doesn't work well either. That's why that powder is so difficult to use. So, but good question. And I am going to put up a little how-to on step mashing for beer making. So if you want to try to do a all malt, single malt, or something of that nature without corn, the step mash is the way to do it. It's the best. I'm not. This isn't an opinion. It's the best way to do it if you don't have corn, 100%. So that's a fact. So there's certain things that are factual. It is better for many reasons, but you might not be able to taste it so much if you're going all the way. But if you're making a beer, 100%, you got to, or you're going to get a milky beer versus a nice clear beer because you got that protein haze if you don't do that protein rest. Yeah, I've got some, that Amanda Palmer's good stuff. Yep, Amanda Brown. I had to check it. I talk to Jay all the time and Amanda rarely, but Jay and I talk all the time. And I keep thinking Amanda Brennan, but I know that's not it. It's everybody. She's known as Amanda. It's like Madonna. It's Amanda, right? Yeah. The Bloody Butcher makes a great sour mash. The first generation is earthy, oily, but once you get past the earthy, oily, in subsequent distillations and sour mashing, it actually makes a pretty good sour mash grain, especially if you mix it with wheat like Jeff has here. They take me to sip this thing, but man, it's 135 proof, so it pickles my liver. Man, that's fire. Good stuff. I'll take some of that to Maggie. I haven't done a bunch. I've got some watermelon brandy. I got a bunch of my old peach. I may infuse. I won't have time this week to do that, so I don't know what I'll be taking. Maggie, probably not much, but Nate at Briscoe. Awesome. I think I might have met him. 1590. Awesome. I was thinking early 1700s. We talked about that not too long ago. Who was trying to think of what we were talking about? Oh, I was talking to somebody about cavorting beasties. Back in the early 1500s or late 1500s, early 1600s, just after they invented the microscope, they would look at samples of water and other things underneath there, and they were seeing all these cells, right? Rotifers being moved around with rotifers and all these different cells moving around and stuff. And the term that they called it back in the day was cavorting beasties. And that's what all those little microorganisms were called, is cavorting beasties. And there's some other radical cavorting beasties or something like that. It was strange, but yeah, somebody was talking about the other day, and I said, yeah, that's all those cavorting beasties in there. And they're like, what are you talking about? I said, Google it, check it out. Actually, back then they knew a lot about the science. They amazingly so. I would hate to say it, but if you purely go on pure capita of distillers, I would say the few distillers that we had in the mid to late 1800s were probably as or more knowledgeable than the average distiller we have today. Now, I'll clarify that with the average distiller we have today includes all the moonshiners and all the people and all the groups that follow recipes and haven't learned a lot of the science. So, but back then, they were pretty scientific. And if you look at a lot of the steel designs from back then, man, they came up with a lot of, it's amazing. And it kind of inspired some of my iterations of everybody looks at mine and says, oh, it looks like you're refining gas or something like that because there's freaking pipes everywhere and stuff. So I got a lot of my inspiration from a lot of the stuff in the past. But one thing I didn't see in the past that I incorporated a while back and shared with the community was the bypass. And I saw a lot of retorts and diversions, which is pretty much, I do mostly diversions now, but like with jar rigs and things like that, you really need the bypass. But I use diversions a lot with my I can come off the still and divert to one path and condense just straight through and try to pull off as low a proof as I can. Or I can go divert and open up another valve, and I can go a different direction to inline infusions, which is something that I came out with about the same time Alan and Wayne came out with theirs. I remember Wayne and Alan, I came out with my video like a week or two before they did theirs. They was like, man, we were getting ready to do our video, you dog. Because I did my video first back today. But a lot of fun. But you know, they've been inline infusers. We didn't revolutionize it, but we made it a lot more practical and easier for people to use than a lot of the stuff from way back when. You know, it's pretty interesting. But yeah, they were actually pretty knowledgeable. But I'm pretty sure they knew about enzymes. I'll have to let me. Oh, you can see that, can't you? Daggone it. Let me do it over here. I don't want to disturb them. I don't want people to see everything I got on there either. I might pull up something naughty or something. Hell, I don't want people to see. Hey, what the hell? I'm just trying to Google. Can I please Google without? All right, let's see. Yeah, the first enzyme diatase was discovered in 1833 by French chemist Anselm P. The enzyme itself was introduced later in 1878 by William Kuhn, according to historical accounts. So, 1894, lock and key model of enzyme substrate interaction, which is what I was showing today. That's what they call it, the substrate interaction between enzymes and starches. So around 1894 and early 1900s, crystallized enzyme urease to proving that enzymes are proteins, which they finally did in 1926. So yeah, that's something. Diatase, 1833. That's about when the first one, yeah, they call it a diatase. So yeah, pretty interesting. Diastase. But yeah, it's definitely come a long way. And now that we have the liquid high temp and the low temp glucose, that really helps. And I can't stress enough, beta amylase is great in what it does, but you really can't beat the effectiveness. Let me enlarge this of this glucose. I mean, look what this glucose amylase. Every one of those are single molecules. Every one of those monosaccharides, right? Debranched. There's no bonds. Debranched. Everyone. No dextrins at all. And see your beta. You know, your beta is not. Your beta is not getting all that. And your alpha doesn't even get close. But you can see the beta makes a lot of dextrins, it makes a lot of disaccharides, but it's that can ferment, and it does a good job of breaking up a lot of that, but it won't break up that bond right there. So that's the reason we try to do alpha amylase first. In the step mashing process, you're kind of getting both alpha and beta at the same time. So you're getting both of these at the same time. So they're working together. But when we go high temp down, anything when we get to this high temperature, like 185-90, that we use a high temp amylase, all other enzymes are denatured. So you're not getting the benefit of any beta at all. So we're debranching with alpha, and then we'll come through with a beta if we add some of our malted grains, you know, at the 135, you know, range, where we should be adding, you know, some of our malted grains, you know, with from this chart here, right? So, you know, our barley malt, 145 to 55 in that range. And barley, that's what I was saying, regular barley, but some of So in that range, that's when you're going to add these. And that's why this is great to have on your phone anytime you're doing it, anytime you're mashing. You can always revert to these temperatures to know what to hold, what temperature to hold, what your ranges are, when to add it. So it's very valuable. It's hard for me to remember it all. I used to remember all this shit, but I'm getting old. Hell, I can't remember my own name. What's going on, Perks? What's up? Yeah, it was. And I was trying to get you on there too, Clint. And if you have time, hang around after the show. I want to talk to you. And I want to get you on here sometime too. And I also want to see if you can help moderate in DIY shining stuff. I need people in there to help answer questions when I'm up there. If you have the time, you know, I know it takes some time. You don't have to do it religiously or anything like that. Just be able to, you know, jump in there and answer a question every once in a while. Be very helpful. And I'll talk to him in the militia too and see if we can't get you some kind of moderator status. We need more knowledgeable people helping answer questions. Yeah, yeah. Amanda and Jay and North Georgia Steel are all opening Unholy Beginnings. Yep, yep. That's not Wayne though. That's not Ozark, but I'm sure they probably have some Ozark stuff. I know they're going to have a steam whistle from Ozark. Maybe I wasn't supposed to tell that. I don't know. So you need a malt all going to mash or just 50%, or what's the percentage of malt versus not needed to malt? Now that's what we were talking about before, is calculating your diastatic power. And basically there are grain bills that are pre-done that'll tell you the percentage of everything. I can and we worked it out a couple of weeks ago. Let me see if I can find my notes on it. It's 30 is the number that you use, and you divide by the pounds of grain and the diastatic power. But if you use the liquid high temp amylase and the glucanase, which you should, it doesn't matter as much anymore. It's less critical. And like Ray and I were talking about tonight, you buy it by the pint. You're using like teaspoons. You know, you use so little of it. And when you do use malts, if you add a little bit of it nowhere near what's required, um, then you'll get perfect, top-notch, best conversions that you can possibly get with what you're doing. They do make a what's called a calculator that you can enter in what percentage of corn, and it really depends on the diastatic power of what you're using. So if you're using like a 2-row, you're going to get like a 1.4 liter. If you're using 6-row, it's going to be higher. Let me see if I can find a chart. Let's see. This is a lot of the stuff I use in class. Let's see. I think I've got a little chart in here. Yeah, here we go. So if you use this chart right here, this will tell you what your Littner diastatic power is, and you can divide this by 30, and you add the weight of your corn, and basically your corn will have 0. So for every pound you need 30. So for example, if you had 10 pounds of corn, that's 300. You would need to add, you know, enough diastatic power to convert the 300. So you would have to add X amount of this, you know, to equal the 300. So you'd have to have at least a couple of pounds or 20% of a 2-row or a 6-row to convert it. So they do make a calculator, and the math isn't that hard. And I can find the thing we were talking about. It's pretty easy if you use the 30 number which is pretty much it's an average. It's a good number to use, and it's easy to get the ballpark. It doesn't have to be exact. The closer, the better. And it's best to go over than to underdo it. So, but there are calculators to do it. But the beauty of it is, see, the 6-row barley is what everybody used to use 6-row because it had the high diastatic power. It wasn't the highest, of course, because that wheat, that wheat and like the triticale he was talking about has a really high diastatic as well. I wasn't aware of the triticale. Let me look on that list again to see. It probably includes that on there, but no, it doesn't. But you can see the wheat malt 180. That triticale is probably 170, just under that red wheat because it is a mixture of the barley and wheat. So, but you see, here's your 6-row, and then here's your 2-row. But now we can use a lot of these lower diastatic malts that have a lot more flavor and would create a little better flavor, even the rye malt, than having the 6-row or a malted wheat. So, but now that we use exogenous enzymes, we can, everybody can see every file I got right there. Every folder. No, I don't care. There ain't nothing there. So now that we have the exogenous enzyme or exogenous, I like calling it exogenous. I know it kills some people, but I'm from the country. We call it exogenous. But we can get by with using less of these or not dependent on these. So we don't need to use less. We can use the same amounts, but we can use different ones because we don't depend on them anymore. So the 6-row doesn't have as good a flavor as a 4. That's again an opinion thing, but 80 out of 100 people are going to say the 2-row tastes better, and maybe 10 or 20 out of 100 are going to say the 6-row is better. So it's not a fact, but more people prefer this. Again, comes back to the drip, right? So there's different ways to get there and flavor once you get there. So kind of breaks that down to that. But now we rely less on that than we used to, and we can rely more on the liquid enzymes that are cheap as shit. So I still use them regardless of, even if I'm using enough malted wheat to do the whole thing double twice, which sometimes I do. I will still put a little bit of that in, especially the alpha, to debranch that corn first and get it manageable. Because see, you're not adding the malted wheat and the malted barley and all that till you get down to 150, 150 degrees. So that's a long wait, and it's a very thick gelatinous corn. If you've ever, if you've done it, So adding that high temp alpha, boom, immediately you start thinning out. Even the powdered 155. So that's where you add the malts. So being able to use that high temp liquid, even if you're using enough diastatic with your malts, it's good because it just makes it manageable, thinner, easier to handle, easier to mix your malts in. When you do start blending them in, you don't have that thick mash anymore. You've got some hydrolyzed, what's called hydrolyzed, and we've talked about the hydrolysis process, like I was talking about. Now, I may not have mentioned the hydrolysis part of it, but when I was talking about how these starches get trapped into here, and I was talking about that water molecule breaking that bond, there's a hydrogen ion that's a positive and the hydronium ion that's negative, and once it touches in between these, it breaks it. That van der Waal and the glycosidic bond with the water breaks that glycosidic bond in these starchy linkages here. These glycosidic bonds are what bonds all these glucose molecules together. So that water molecule is the mechanism that it's using to break it, right? And it bonds to each and it gets broken. And that's called hydrolysis. And that's when we talk about hydrolyzing, that's what it's doing. It's breaking it and debranching it by hydrolyzing it. And Amazing how that works. In my understanding, corn has enough amylase to convert itself, but not enough to convert any additional grain. To a point. If you get a perfect modified corn, that every kernel in there has been perfectly, like we were talking about the modified and under modified versus not modified in the rye. Let me pull this up. The same thing takes place within this. So just like corn, this is barley. This is a barley seed. Same principle, just the same principle as the corn. So if you don't get every one of those corn kernels, every one of them has a radical exactly 1/4 inch long. Every one of them are dried perfectly at that point, and then you knock that little radical off because it's bitter, and then you have a perfectly modified corn. You may have just enough to do it, but it's still iffy, and you're still not going to get a great conversion. So it can barely do itself if everything's perfect, but that's really hard to achieve. Getting that perfectly, if malting houses might be able to do it, but still barely enough, and really not enough. You're going to get a higher higher sugar reading if you add some liquid alpha versus just using the corn. So I don't think it would be perfect. You're probably going to get maybe in the 90s if everything's perfect, which is suitable. That would be perfectly suitable, and you're getting a good conversion, and you're going to be in the 1060, 1065 range instead of the 107 change range, right? But you're going to get enough, and most commercial distilleries, that's enough. 1060, 1065, run it. Ferment. 4 days later, run it. It's clockwork, and they've got everything. All parameters are exacting. They but most these days don't do that. The old school did, and they would use those numbers and run with it. These days they don't malt the corn anymore. They just use the exogenous enzymes now. Not many people are doing the malted corn route. That's why I was also talking about how a lot of us craft distillers can, do it the old school way. And like Wayne was talking about, a good point that I really never thought about was you don't get all the starches, converted, and you do have some of those starches and sugars, that are still in there that aren't fermented, and I have, talked down and a lot of things. Sometimes he'll pull a little bit early to keep some of those, some of the sugars in there and distill with to get certain flavors with specific distillation. So that's when it becomes advanced distilling, when you start doing these different techniques and different things and experimenting, like we were talking tonight. This is when we talk about advanced stuff. This is the advanced stuff that we're talking about, and it's awesome to be able to do little experiments like that and to see what happens. Unfortunately, in the whiskey and bourbon industry, you have to wait 3 or 4 years to see what happens. With your experiment, so you won't know what happens until 4 to 6 years later. You stick that whiskey thief down in that barrel and give her a try, and it's like, wow, it worked, eureka. It only took 6 years to figure it out, man, but we were onto something back then. Let's try it. So it takes a long time, but you can, but it's not going to be 100% effective. But I mean, that was the old way. There was a lot of liquor made with 100% malted corn. I would say they probably paid a lot more care into the level of see, the thing is, once you get to a certain point, let me show here again. like what we were talking about. So when this little radical drops down, this little taproot, when it drops down, all these starches begin getting consumed, right? So we want to stop that process immediately. So when this thing is just like an eighth to a quarter of an inch radical, we want to stop that process. Now we don't want to use too much heat to stop it, but we got to dry it. And malt houses, they'll toast, so they can use a temperature low enough not to denature, but quick enough to dry it and get this little radical off there because it's bitter. But the longer that goes and the longer that root, the more these starches get consumed and the more these amylase get consumed the starch to convert it, right? So you're getting less and less of the amylase, you're getting less and less starch, so you're going to get less sugar. So you really have to stop it at a certain rate, and it's really, a lot of times, especially like the Amanda Palmer, that would probably be a corn that you don't want to malt, simply because it's got probably going to have and a lot of corns that are mixed, like your Kentucky gin corn, that's got a lot of different mix, even on the same kernel, because each of them might have a little bit different malting time. That would be something you'd have to experiment with on the Amanda Palmer. But I do know when they start mixing corns together, like your Buddy Butcher and your Blue Hopi and your Argentine Orange and your Oaxacan Greens, all these unique heirloom corns, they don't all malt at the same. They don't malt at the same rate. So some will produce that little radical quicker in a few days. Some will take weeks. So you're not going to get a fully modified malt, right? So it's going to be an under modified malt, and then it's not going to be as efficient as the result of that. So that's about the best way. You can still do it, but with as cheap as the amylase is these days, there's no use in doing it that way, unless of course you're doing it just for flavor and old school and wanting to pull some old school. But if you're doing it that way, yeah, you can, but you're going to get a little bit less production out of it. Great question. Yep, that's process, brother, and now you know why. Now you know why. So, I guess you're probably using that high temp because you said cook corn at alpha. You didn't say cook corn cool down at alpha because using the old powder, you had to cool it down to 155, and it had to be right at 150, 55 for that shit to work. And you had to keep it right in that range, 150 to 60, I think it was. You had to keep it right in that range, or else it wouldn't work well at all, and it was a booger to get to work right. But yeah. Well, there comes a point that saving a buck really, you're not saving money. Let me put it this way: if you place a value on your time, then you're not saving money. I just got a notification that some details were hidden. Well, okay, that's good. I don't care. Anyway, so it depends on how much you value your time, and you can do it the old school way. And when you're using malts, it's more expensive using malts than using because malts are expensive. Than getting a malted wheat versus a wheat, a lot more expensive. A malted barley versus a barley, a lot more expensive. So when you buy malted grains versus just using liquid high temp alpha and the glucose, it's more expensive. But there's flavor. You got the flavor of the malted grains. So when you use the flavor of the malted grains, do you want to use a 6-row or a 2-row? It's 2 rows cheaper, more common. You use more for beer making. 6 rows more for a whiskey type making and a little more expensive and harder to get and less flavorful. So there's trade-offs. It just according to how much you value your time. But I would say in the end, you're going to save money and time both by using the liquid high temp and the glucose. And you're going to get more sugars, more liquor. Um, like we were talking about the drip, you're going to get the drip. You're going to get to the drip. And you're going to get a good drip. You're going to get a good drink. It's just how efficient is it going to be, and what's the cost, and what's the time. Um, for what it is, those enzymes, unless you're doing huge volumes, in which case, if you are, money shouldn't be a problem anyway. If you make a lot, if you're making a little, that shit goes a long, long way. Because I mean, you're using just tiny bits. You mean if you use it properly, and like Wayne said, a little bit less than what they even call for, um, it's cheap. It is really cheap to use, and if you buy it from certain places, it's a little bit cheaper. You save, if you really, I prefer. I used to, get it off Prohibition while he was selling it, and I don't know if he's doing it as much anymore. I'll see him at Maggie hopefully this coming weekend, and I'll get my annual supply of enzymes off of him. I get them off of him every year, and he gives me a good deal on it, and I'm supporting the brother. Right? Phil Billy has them. That's the only thing I get off Prohibition, and I support him. I get other things off Phil Billy and help support him, and then some things, I'll just get from farmers, and so. But I do try to support my brothers and local farmers anytime I can. But in the long run, it's better if you just go ahead and bite the bullet, save a little money, and get them. It makes everything so much easier, and it's worth it in the long run. It makes it so much easier. But if you want to be nostalgic, there's absolutely nothing wrong with going the old school way. And I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna do a tutorial, basically in text. I've actually already started on it. I was looking at it earlier tonight when I was going through some of my notes for tonight's lesson, and so I'm going to. It's pretty wild looking at that, and I can't get past it. It's like infinity, man. It goes to infinity, literally to just a dot. And inside that dot is like a pixel, I guess, sub-pixels. I don't know. Crazy. For those that are tripping out there, just okay. Malting is the way to do it, or high heat. Um, I prefer just to gelatinize my corn in 90 minutes at 185 to 90, cooking and steeping a little bit of both. I cook up to a point, then I steep after that. I'm adding corn to boiling water while it's being stirred. And once all that's added and stirred, I cut off the heat where I've already cut down the heat once it starts boiling, but I cut off the heat and I steep in a insulated barrel. So everything gets dumped into that barrel, and then I just add a little bit of hot water to maintain it. So if I need 20 gallons of water to do, 50 pounds of corn, which is 2.5, right? I'll boil 18, and I'll have a couple on the side, like I talked about before. I'll have a couple of gallons on the side boiling. Dump all that into a insulated barrel, and then as the temp gets below 185, I'll add a little bit of that boiling water in there to keep the temp up, and then until it gets totally gelatinized, I'll keep stirring it in, adding it, stirring it in, and then after 90 minutes to a couple hours, it'll be totally gelatinized, and then I'll throw in the alpha amylase once it gets around 185. I think is what they want to use it at, which is good temp for alpha, high temp alpha, 185. I'll add that then. It's amazing, man. That stuff just goes from thick, just like cream corn thick. You've seen it, to thin. Just it gets hydrolyzed, to watered, and it's all that water deep breaking it and hydrolyzing, and it's thinning it, and it's breaking all those long chains into smaller chains, and it's liquefaction is what basically you're doing. Said flow is a glucanase, xylanase and pectinase. Yeah, it's got to have pulinase in there. But yeah, the glucans, that's what you're breaking up, right? The glucans. So a glucanase, uh, all glucanase is pulinase, but not all pulinase are glucanases, right? So the xylanase and pectinase and some of those other ones, well, those aren't pulinases, but I'm sure there's probably some pulinases in there. I think the xylanase might be it. Xylanase is a cellulase. I think that's a cellulase. It's more of a cellulase. But yeah, yeah, good to know. Yeah, I'm definitely going to get some because I like wheat and I use wheat a lot, and I deal with the gummy shit a lot. And anybody that deals with that's awesome, brother. What kind of housework you got going on? Yeah, yeah, that's kind of what we were talking about. Doing it separately. Doing your corn and getting it worked up and letting it cool down, and then adding the others to the corn, building it back up, which is basically similar to what that was. So you'd save all this to the side, and anytime you brought your corn down, then you can step it back up. But yeah, that's the old way, and you were talking about saving money. Um, Doing it the old school way and step mashing is definitely you're not going to have to pay for that, but you're going to pay for the malts. And I do like malted grains, and so if you're going to be using the malt anyway, you can save a little by using a 2-row, and it just all comes out in the wash. I really think that you would benefit highly in the long run. It's just you just got to save money, brother, any way you can. I know um, got to prioritize. So take care of things as you can, and make money where you can, and you know and I think I would say buy it in smaller quantities, like in pints and stuff, but they jack up the price so much. It's like a pint costs this, but 2 pints is just $1 more. It's crazy. So it's gets to the point where you keep it in the fridge and it'll keep for a long time. Shelf life isn't forever, but it it should last. Well, I guess we could go to Firm Solutions and check on shelf life and stuff. But I'd say probably a couple few years easy in the fridge. But it may lose efficacy, over time. So you might have to use a little bit more. But it's not real bad expensive. I think especially if you could go to the Danville. I don't know if they allow walk-ins. I've always just had it shipped, but um, I don't know if they're able to do walk-ins in their Danville store or not. But you could check online, and if you're close by, I mean, you're not too far from it. Or if you ever happen through, you can definitely stop by if they have an open storefront. I've never been there yet, but I definitely want to get down there and look around. I definitely want to check out their distillery as well, Wilderness Trace. And talk to Mr. Heist. Definitely want to do that as well. Very knowledgeable guy. Alan and I were talking about him. Probably the most knowledgeable person in the world on the science and everything. I mean, they run a lab that's world renowned. I mean, there may be other people, but they're not online. They don't talk about it. They're Yeah, I'd say that's a fact, brother. Especially corn liquor. Corn liquor is so cheap to make. That's why everybody made moonshine instead of brandy. You back in the day, everybody made a lot of brandy and stuff, but they didn't make it to sell, and it wasn't profitable like corn liquor. Corn liquor, like we said, me and Mike Crane, we sat down and broke it down and the costs of everything just for us, not getting, wholesale prices, just for us, what we get off the shelf. Corn, sugar, getting your sugars from corn, much, much cheaper than just trying to make a sugar shine, and it's better. So, definitely cheap. Beer making is expensive, and it's a drawn out process. There's pasteurization. There's a lot of things involved. It's a lot more involved. Chillers, you got to cool things quicker. You don't want it to sit at higher temperatures and stuff because of the protein. It's definitely it's a different ball game, but it's expensive to make a beer than to just buy it, especially cheap beer. I've never been a big beer drinker. Well, I drank a lot of beer, but I didn't really like it as much. So, do you know barrel aging? What proofs pull? What profiles best? Yeah. Actually, and I don't want to get this wrong, so I may have to Google it. But I'm thinking higher proofs tend to pull more tannins, be a little bit more bitter, but they pull maybe more vanilla, and then lower proofs do more sweet and caramel. But let me double check that because I'd hate to tell somebody wrong. But I've not. I just gotten a couple of barrels. So I've just gotten a couple of 15-gallon barrels. Okay, here's the AI. It's higher proof during barrel aging, tends to extract more tannins and lignans, which I was talking about the bitterness. So I was right about that. From the wood, leading to bolder, spicier flavors and more pronounced oak influence. Higher alcohol. I was wrong about this. No, I was right. Higher alcohol levels can also extract more vanillin, which contributes to the vanilla flavor. Conversely, lower entry proofs encourage oxidation and faster dissolution of wood sugars, leading to softer, mellow, and sweeter flavor with more caramelization. So I was right. I want to make sure. I want to double check because I'm getting forgetful as I get older, and I don't want to tell anybody something wrong. And people say, "Oh, he Googles all the answers." I don't. Most of my answers come right off my head. You see me. But things like that, I want to make sure that I'm giving the right answer out because I'm getting old and forgetful, and sometimes I get things mixed up. But the higher proof get more penetration into the pores of the wood, and that's how it pulls out more of those tannins and lignans from the wood itself, and it gives a bitter note, and like I was saying, the spicy, depending on the wood too. Different woods will give you a different spicy notes, in that higher proof. The reason a lot of distilleries go with higher barrel proof is there's a cutoff for bourbon, so they can't go into the higher proof. But actually, sometimes the proof increases while it's in the barrel, depending on where it's at in the rick house, versus sometimes it goes down depending on where it's located in the rick house. So that was interesting to find out. I found that out not too long ago, and talking to some commercial distillers that do a lot of aging. Aging is not something that moonshiners do. You generally don't want to keep the evidence around long, right? But nowadays, home distillers, we have small barrels that we like to age on. And I picked up a couple of 15s, and I'm going to start putting a little bit of corn liquor in to see what I can do, and some multigrain, and see what I can do as far as aging long term. Up to this point, I've done barrel stage, which really is different and different profiles. But yeah, I hope that answered your question, Richard. Yeah, higher proof, more tannins, more lignans, more spice, and vanillins. And then lower proof gets you more sugar caramelization. Actually, Going in at a lower proof, like 110-20, probably give you a good sweet, caramely liquor. Kind of like what my buddy Jim Bruins with his liquor. I think he went in at pretty low because his is really probably one of the more heavy caramelized aged liquors I've had. It's very caramely. Good. But very caramely. You get that note just smacks you in the face right when you drink it. So I'm pretty sure he probably goes in with about 110-20 versus 130 plus, maybe 110 probably. But it's very caramely. May go in 100. I hope that answers the question, brother. And a lot of times when I do check Google, a lot of times I have the answer, but a lot of times Googling gives me a little bit of extra info to add to it. Like I knew that it pulled out more tannins, but lignans. I'm thinking about lignans. I forgot all about lignans. So sometimes it helps, but I don't just sit and Google every answer somebody asks. But no, I'll resort to Google. Be stupid not to, right? But yeah, I don't sit and Google answers. A lot of people do that because it makes them feel better about themselves, and it tries to tear me down. You know how some people are; they like to tear other people down. Yeah, we got those people. Yeah, definitely. And most distillers do, kind of like what we were talking about, a reverse step. They'll start with the corn and then go backwards. I'd say 90% do a reverse step. Go backwards. But nowadays, I'm sure that they uh, probably did kind of a forward, like Wayne was talking about, do the corn first or separate and then add it, or do the corn and then lower the temperature with a chiller and then start over with bringing it up. Similar to what? I just finished that off last night. Good sweet stuff right there, man. That's good stuff. Yeah, disaccharides and some of those tries that are really difficult for it to eat. And also just using table sugar, which is a fructose and a glucose instead of just like corn. When you use that table, you got that fructose and glucose bonded together, and it takes a little bit longer, and it's got that fire. They're having to break that disaccharide bond. Whereas when you have like a monosaccharide, like a corn sugar or a dextrose, it's a single molecule. And when you use, let me get back to this chart. When you use glucose in conjunction with the beta, you can see all monosaccharides. The glucoamylase, you got to really, I can't stress enough. If it's always great to use, even if you're using malts, just for this reason, because it really finishes it all off, and it does it. Like when I was talking to Wayne, he wasn't seeing that instant result. It works overnight too. It's working and working, and sometimes it takes some time for all these to kind of mingle and bump into each other, and that water molecule break it apart, right? Um, but it will with almost 100% efficiency. So using that glucose is awesome. Used to people just use the alpha and beta when you use just malts, and you still got some unfermented dextrins in there, like what we were talking about in the old school way, right? There was always some leftover dextrins that didn't get fermented because they were trisaccharides or oligosaccharides. So now when I talk about oligosaccharides, that's these, right, that are branched together, 3 or more. So it's a trisaccharide all the way up to like 12. But usually your alpha and your beta will debranch. Your alpha debranch from endo. It works from the inside out. And it's the only thing that's going to break this branch up will be an alpha. Your beta, it works from the outside. It's an exogenic enzyme, and it works from the outside. It'll break that off from the outside, and it'll break that off the outside, but it won't break that off because it's a branch, and only alpha will do that with an endogenic. So, a lot of times when I talk about all that, I don't get into the scientific detail, but we talk about getting a little bit more advanced for some people that want some more advanced, and it's good for everybody to know. Everybody now has a better understanding of what's going on and why we step and how these amylase work with each other. There's not a lot of places where you can get this kind of information that people know that can break it down and illustrate. And that's my whole point. I want to educate people, and maybe someday there's going to be some more Clints out there that I educate. Clint and I can educate them and make some more commercial distillers. And get people, that are young and still going to school or wanting to go back to school and learn about this stuff, or go to a distilling university. They'll go into a little bit more detail than I am tonight. You'll have some, a little bit more detailed study, but pretty high level for what we're doing here, and I hope everybody gets a little bit better understanding. Yeah. But yeah, inverted sugar, you can take that same sugar, Clint, and invert it and break that glycosidic bond and have a free monosaccharide of glucose and a free monosaccharide of fructose, and take a lot of that bite away. So it has to be something with that yeast having to break that bond themselves that gives it that fire, and it's the stress that it puts on them to break that. And there's lots of stresses that we can give to yeast. pH is another stressor of yeast. Temperature, another stressor of yeast. So there's lots of things that we can, put in there to stress yeast. Even competing with lactose can stress the yeast and competing for the sugars and stuff. So having different bacterias in there to cause problems and issues, and having excess oxygen and making them go into a breeding cycle. There's lots of things that we can do to stress yeast. And another advanced part of distilling is sometimes people have learned how to stress yeast specific ways to get them to create some unique flavors that we call congeners that end up tasting good after it comes out of a barrel 4 years later, right? One of those eureka moments. It did work. It tastes better after 4 years. We created this one flavor from the stress that I'm not saying stress your yeast, but in an experiment, a controlled experiment, doing it a certain way every time and doing one different, but everything else the same, and this being the only differing factor, and then putting those in 3 barrels, and then 5 years down the road trying all 3 and seeing if that one was different and unique, and if you made a congener by stressing it a certain way or leaving more sugars in, or different things can lead to different innovations, and that's advanced distilling. Never done a sugar wash. Added plenty of sugar to sour mash. Well, basically, a mash has grains. Now, I'm not browbeating you, Dustin. Mash has grains. A must has fruits. And a wash is like with sugars, or like a rum, or like a tequila, where it's just that type of sugars, or corn sugars. You can make it with just corn sugar, or so all those are considered washes or mashes or musts. But sugar washes are easy. I would say they're cheap, but they're easier than they are cheap, because corn's cheaper, but it's not easy. So it's a huge trade-off But what little extra trouble you go through just to do a corn with the exogenous enzymes, just a straight corn to get the sugars. It's cheaper, but it's in the long run, but it takes more time. Even if you count the heat used to heat it up and cook it, the exogenous enzymes. But then again, I guess if you're doing like a gallon, no, probably not. But after a certain point in volume, it's definitely cheaper and but not easy. But it's hot, and it's it's got its use out there. I've for many moons I made take cornmeal and add sugar and water and yeast and boom, that's it. Didn't convert nothing, didn't add any enzymes, just it's basically cornmeal flavored sugar wash, and it made a fairly hot moonshine, but it tasted decent. And if you do it right, it's not so bad. But once you do an all grain, you won't ever do that again, right? You'll go to the extra effort. But in a pinch, if you don't have time and you just want to get a quick mash going, and you just don't have the time to cook and do all the shit, you don't have amylase, you don't have malt, you don't want to freaking do all that, cornmeal and sugar and water and yeast and a little bit of time will also give you a pretty, you know, and people expect it. When you give somebody, moonshine, they're not expecting a good smooth liquor like we make, if we do all grains and stuff. So, it's, they expect fire. I talk to my friends, about moonshine that aren't distillers or shiners or have never done it. They're like, "Oh man, that stuff's hot, man. That stuff's it burns all the way down, man." And usually they associate moonshine with high proof and burn. So if you wanna give somebody some high proof and burn, give them some sugar shine. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that goes back to efficiency and cost. You save a lot of money, and Uncle Jesse, it's basically a sour mashing. He basically described how to do sour mashing, and different people do it different ways. I don't think he talked about supplementing grains to make a perpetual sour mash. So what happens after so many generations, you start losing flavor, and you just have to start over. And I don't think Uncle Jesse's goes into taking out 10% each time and adding 10% fresh grain each time. And, I'm sure if they had yellow label angel yeast, they would have been using it that way. You don't have to cook the corn or anything like that. You can just continuously keep using that, and it helps convert right at the same time. So as you add so many percent of corn to each fermentation, but it's going to take a little bit longer, but it's going to convert and do all that for you, so you don't have to cook it and add gelatinized corn into it, and that's been alpha and get your flavor profile. So you can do it like every other time or whatever. You can take a certain percentage out and add a certain percentage of grain in, and you can just do that forever and go forever. But if you do Uncle Jesse's, by there straight, eventually it just becomes a sugar shine with very little grain flavor coming through, because it's just been washed out, spent. The grains get spent after so many times, after getting used so many times. So if you pull out X amount and replenish it every generation or two, you can just make it forever, in perpetuity. And I think that's the best way to do it. But he did make it a lot easier for people, and explain to people how it was done and simplified it. But I think most people following that exact recipe, after they get to generation 5 or 6, they've noticed a little bit of loss in flavor, and definitely once you get to 8, 9, and 10, it's just And you could compare the two. Keep a jar of the first, second, and third, and compare it to the 8th, 9th, and 10th, and you'll see the difference. And it's best to kind of supplement if you can, and you can do it perpetually then. Right. But yeah, I love sour mash, and I drink a lot of sour mash. A lot of people don't like it. I didn't care for it as much when I was younger, but as I've gotten older, my tastes have changed a little bit. I don't mind it as much now. Getting late. I have to get through these questions real quick. Yeah, yeah, just rum distillers, tequila, and all that. But yeah, just regular whiskeys. They didn't use any sugars at all. There might have been some that used some cane sugars, cane juice or something, but it wasn't a common thing. It was pretty much all grain. That's what Amanda and Alan and them do when they go up to, as we talked about, when they go to Mount Vernon and do the reenactments and stuff. Man, I love reading about all that stuff and make the liquor just like they did it back in the day. And he's done a lot of that, like in the absinthe, from the 1800s and whiskeys from the 1700s and stuff. Very interesting. All right, let's see. I'm trying to see. I think Clint got most of them taken care of. Yeah, definitely. If you brought corn and sugar, brother, I did that for 30 some years. I did cornmeal and sugar for a long time, and I didn't put it on any chips either. We just drank it and sold it as it was, or we bartered. You know. I guess statute of limitations is long gone. But yeah, we can't talk about that on here. They don't like it. What a question. Oh, wow. So it ain't none of us pros, brother. We're all learning every day. I learn something every day. I learned a few things tonight just putting all this together. Yeah, steeping is the way to go if you don't have to cook it. That's why I like insulating your fermentation barrels. You can hold your temps. In beer making, they wouldn't want that because they want it to go from one tip. After they get through the rest, rush to the next temp. Something to do with proteins. So that's why they use those chillers. Once they get it all done and pasteurized, they want it chilled immediately because once you pasteurize it, you want to get that temp down as quickly as possible because of the proteins and the haze involved. So pretty interesting. Yeah, I think the TTB puts a limit on it. Is it 125 or 30 or something like that? That's the max that they can go into the barrel. But I was really surprised to learn a while back, not too long ago, that some barrels, depending on where they're located in the rick house, whether it's up high where it's usually a lot hotter, and towards the outside walls where it gets a little hotter, towards lower to the inside where it stays a little cooler. You get a lot, some proof increases and some proof decreases, depending on the location of the rick house. So the higher the temperature, the I think the lower the proof and the lower the temperature, the higher the proof. Could be opposite of that. I'll have to check it. I can't remember what they said. But I'm thinking the higher the temperature, the more evaporation of alcohol, which leaves more water. And the lower the temperature, the less evaporation range will share. And maybe more moisture gets lost. I don't know. I have to research that a bit more. But I was amazed that somehow it makes a difference. Yep. Yep. And so wild yeast can also, a lot of people talk about using the wild yeasts. It's hit and miss, and you really don't want to experiment on it with a large batch, which we do a lot of small stuff. If you're a huge commercial distiller and you got 5,000 gallon fermenters, you're not going to really want to. You're not going to want to experiment with wild yeast on a 5,000 gallon fermenter, right? So you try to. Most of these places though, they've got so much yeast where they've worked with the same yeast over the years. It's covering all every surface in the whole fucking distillery. It's kind of like powder mold in the basement. So it's going to be a rare. Yeah, I'll look into CH. All right, we've run on a good almost going on 4 hours now. But it's been a good episode. I think it's one that a lot of people will want to mark again with the episode with a lot of the technical information that was shared in it. I think it's going to be, yeah. Wild yeasts tend to go pretty quick and fast, and they can add some really good flavors and some really shitty flavors. And I'd say if you were to look at all the wild yeasts that are out there, I would say most of them would probably be not as flavorful as what you'd want, but they tend to work off really quick, and they don't have a really good acid. A lot of the yeasts have been selectively bred over time to be resistant towards low or highly acidic fermentations down into the threes. By the time you get to the end with some of the wines and temperatures, different yeast with different temperatures. So some of the wild yeast tend to work off fast, and they don't have the alcohol tolerance, so they work off pretty fast. And then once the alcohol gets to a certain level, they can't handle it anymore. And I think that's when some of the off flavors are given, because they really haven't been selectively bred to handle the pH, the temperature, and the alcohol tolerance. So I think if you could eliminate that, or maybe throw them in late during the fermentation, well, alcohol tolerance would be a problem then. So sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. I think a lot of times what people consider wild yeast aren't technically wild. They're just yeast that have been on things, covering things for a long time. But a lot of the stuff you get off your fruits and stuff like grapes, a lot of that white on the outside is going to be a lot of yeast, and a lot of the wineries don't want that. So they'll they'll hit it with a high temp to kill all that off, so they can use their specific yeast. They want a specific yeast, but for certain brandies, I'd say it'd probably be beneficial. It just depends on what it is, where it is, and it's something you have to experiment with. Scott, you getting here this late, brother? You're gonna have to rewind it and watch it from the beginning. It's been a pretty good episode. Went over a lot of the science and stuff that some people have been asking for, get a little bit more technical. So I think for people that are wanting to get serious and they're just curious and want to learn how a lot of this starches are converted and how sugars are made from complex starches, it'll be a good episode. I think it'll be one that people will definitely want to save and maybe revert back to. I'm not going to be here Saturday. I will be here Wednesday. Probably won't be able to do a very long podcast Wednesday night. I got to get ready and be in Maggie Valley Thursday for the pre-party at the tavern. So I hope to see a lot of you there then. So I'll see y'all Wednesday, but Saturday we may jump on and do a little remote from the festival grounds there at Maggie and do it, howdy and shout out. Probably do it with Tom and Damon and all them, so it'll be on the same back channels that you're used to seeing us. But yeah, it'll probably be the group of us, Wes, and all of us will probably be hanging out close to the camera. Of course, Damon, he'll be right there in front of it. He has all that gear and he takes it and sets it up for us. He does a lot, man. It's a lot of work. We really appreciate him for doing all that. And we will see you all Wednesday and then Saturday and hopefully I think either next Wednesday or next Saturday. Hopefully by then I'll have more of the step by step fermentation kind of set up into maybe the beer side of it just with grains, and then if you were to add corn or start with corn and then cool it and then start again. So I'm going to do a little step by step on that, and then maybe a week or two from that I'll go through kind of a modified Uncle Jesse's that supplements the grain, so you can, like I was talking about, doing in the longer, more perpetuity where you can just keep it going forever. I mean, I know people that use the same thing for years, and it's more true to a sour mash than use a lot of the back set like Nick was talking about, but using replenished grains. And I think a lot of commercial distilleries that do sour mash do it that way. So we'll touch on some of that next week, and we will, I guess, see you all Wednesday. So everybody have a great rest of your weekend. Thanks for tuning in. Hit the like, subscribe button, and send me hearts and all kinds of thumbs up and all that good stuff. And share us with some of your friends, and get the word out so we can grow. And the more we grow, the more places YouTube and some of the other outfits will show us. So if you see the Distilling 101 podcast page, Hangout fit. If you see the Distilling 101 podcast page, I know a lot of you watch from that, from YouTube and stuff, but if you can click on that and go to that page and subscribe to it, it will help me get this out on more reels so we get more exposure, so more people come in and learn. And that's what we're all about, is spreading the word. So it's great seeing you all, and we will see you all. Clint, you on Facebook? Can you jump on Facebook so I can? You're already in the DIY Shine and stuff group, right? I'm waiting for the delay. I know there's a delay. If you can get on Facebook, that would be beneficial. If not, I think I can contact you on YouTube. I'll try to go through YouTube. If not, I'll send you a message on Messenger. But for everybody else, thanks for joining us, and we will see you guys and gals on Wednesday. Until then, peace out, shine on, and have a great week.